Okay, we've got a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve the accounts in the amount of $514,892.36. Could I have a motion from Councillor Finley?
I so move.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Moffat.
I'll second that.
All in favor of account A?
Oh, yeah.
Aye.
Oh, yes, I did see that.
Thank you, Dale.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does approve the accounts in the amount of $257,791.06. Could I have a motion from Art Cole?
So moved.
Thank you. And seconded by Ted Collins.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Terry, you can come back.
Right.
So, can we go to a public meeting?
It's not a public meeting, it's a delegation, so yeah.
Okay.
Here, so.
So we're going to do the delegation, which is Linus Roya, who's no stranger to us. You're going to let her in. Oh, there she is. Okay, now I see her. Hi, Linus.
Hi.
Thank you very much for joining us in this unconventional method. Okay. Can I ask everybody who's not speaking to mute?
Yeah, there's background noise again there.
Okay,
No.
Linus, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for hearing me out on this and inviting me to come and participate. This is my first Zoom, so hope I'm going to do everything right. The reason I wanted to speak with council is that we would like to have the Thanksgiving market again this year. I forget the year that we started doing it. It was, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. But we would very much like to do it again. And I understand that the Pumpkin Festival is not going to be taking place this year. So I'm asking permission from the council if we can have the Thanksgiving market on the Saturday of the Thanksgiving weekend, starting from 10 until about 2.
And where are you proposing to host it, Linus?
On the street in front of the community hall and on the other side of 141 going up to the variety store. I had thought we could do with just in front of the hall, but there's a lot of interest in participating. So I believe we're going to need the street, the whole street, in front of the hall right up to the variety store.
Did you give any thought to holding it at the waterfront?
We had not. We had not, simply because people are used to having something going on in the village that weekend.
Okay, can I just ask the clerk, what's involved in closing those two portions of the street and the timeline?
So what would happen, there's a motion tonight, if council approves it, has to go through posting and public notice. So we post down around the area and have the bylaw that comes before council temporarily close whatever portions. So at this point, it would probably be, the earliest would be the second week, or the second meeting in September.
Would that give you're thinking of this on the Thanksgiving weekend?
Yes.
And what are those dates exactly?
I used to know the date. My friend is going to go get a calendar and I can tell you the date.
I think Thanksgiving Monday's the 10th? No, Thanksgiving Monday's the 12th. So Saturday would be October 10th.
October 10th it is.
Is that sufficient notice for the clerk to get the streets closed?
It's close. We have to give it our best to try and see if we can get that.
Okay. We have a question from Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. Will OPP be required or just our bylaw? And secondly, how many bylaw people would we have to put in there on overtime?
We have never had the OPP involved. We've had I believe it was 2 bylaw officers that would spell each other off.
Sorry, guys.
Go ahead, Craig.
Just one clarification, we generally, I believe Don's on,
Yes,
so
yes.
he can verify this, we generally only close it Victoria Street West from 141 up to the fire hall. We don't close from there because of fire hall access.
Right.
Yes.
Don could do that.
Dawn,
So
could
we-
you
so
verify where the
we do
streets
not
would be?
close Highway 141?
No,
We don't
No.
have that authority.
we do not have that authority, and we never have.
I see that, you know, even when the Pumpkin Festival was going and other festivals, I see that as a real safety problem, people crossing the highway, thinking maybe traffic's going to slow down or stop. If it's not controlled by OPP or bylaw on the highway, there's a lot of risk.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Chief Hood to reply to what would be
And
necessary.
we'd be liable for allowing it.
Yeah, in the past, we have provided 2 officers, as Lynn has said, and we basically have both of them in the vicinity of 141 in Victoria, or at least one at all times. That sort of almost acts as a crossing guard you'd see at school. And so that gets the people from one side to the other. The only, from my perspective, we've had great cooperation out in front of the fire hall to keep that area open and not block it up with people. So the street itself from the fire hall east to 141 remains open. My only thought on this would be, with the social distancing still in effect, and I'm assuming the hall probably not usable, it could limit the number of people possibly at that location. So I'm not sure whether you have considered that in your, in your vendor numbers, but it does, if you've got 6 feet even between tents, it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've been dealing with that at the market, and our market manager spent a lot of time with the health department, finding out what exactly we needed to do to make sure that we were following the guidelines. And so we have done that. And there's a group of us who go in every Friday morning and set things up. And we're quite confident that we're following the guidelines from the Department of Health.
Oh, you absolutely are, 100%. Yeah. Sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. I would just be concerned for you. Do you have enough space using Victoria Street with that extra distancing and the fact that the Memorial Hall would not be available, which I know you've used in the past? That would be my concern for your sake.
The market manager has received a number of applications wanting to attend the Thanksgiving market. And because we've done this before, he's able to estimate how many vendors that we can fit in with the appropriate spacing.
Okay.
We had, apparently the hall is going to be open, and I have spoken with Dominique to ask if we can reserve it for the market. We're not sure that we want to do that. We would go with, we would comply with the Department of Health and what they wanted, but I did ask that we have reserved that for that day and those hours. We don't know if we're going to use it or not, but the option is there apparently.
Okay, and I'm assuming, I do believe you've done an excellent job at the market on Friday. I'm assuming you'd have one-way pedestrian traffic at the Thanksgiving market like you have done on Friday mornings. It would have to be that to encourage the social distancing as well.
Yes. And we have many, many hundreds of feet of rope. and we will have to be putting those up so that we do have the one entrance and one exit. And I know that our market manager will be talking with the Department of Health about this, and please be assured that we will conform 100%.
Okay, and just one last question from me. Have you talked to the Pumpkin Festival people about going ahead with the Thanksgiving market?
Well, Interestingly enough, I have tried, and I've been trying to find out who is on the committee, and I have not been successful in finding anyone who is on the committee. I spoke with Laurie McDonald from the general store, and she says, I have no idea. I have no idea who's on the committee. Karen is leaving. Ray is passed. They were the major players. So I've told, I let Laurie know that the Thanksgiving market was going to go ahead, and I asked her to spread the word, but I have not been able to find a person who's on the board.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Osborne, you have a question?
Just, yeah, with regards to and I understand, Lennis, you've done the one-way thing at the farmer's market. How would you accomplish that on the other side, the store, the pizza place side of the highway? Would you enter from the 141 and have to go around the side street to get out around by Crossroads, or how do you stop people from going up and down those streets when they're both adjacent to the highway?
It hasn't been discussed, but I would think that we would have to have people have a market person at the entrance and say, no, this is the entrance. You can only go in here. You can't go in the exit. Does that answer your question?
Well, no, to go up to the bakery from 141, in order to have it one way, they would have to continue on an exit off the side street over towards Crossroads, would they not? Either that or come back down the same street in the reverse direction. I don't understand.
If they would go up one side of the street and then come back on the other side
Oh,
of the street.
I understand. So 2 wide
Yeah.
lanes. Okay.
I think that would likely be the way it would work.
All right. Thank you. That makes sense.
Just from a next steps point of view, Craig, I guess one thing I would, if council approves this, I would like you to work very closely with Dominique and perhaps our chief administrative officer to make sure that whatever you're putting in place has the approval of public health. And that needs to happen at least at the same time as we're putting out notices to close streets.
Absolutely. I can guarantee that we will be working closely with the Department of Health.
Okay, so I have a motion here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve in principle the request by Rosso Farmers Market organizers to hold a Thanksgiving market in the village of Rosso on Saturday, October 10th, 2020, subject to the required public notice process for the temporary closure of a portion of Victoria Street West for the event, and that the council does hereby direct staff to commence public notice process for the temporary closure of a portion of Victoria Street West and Victoria Street East for the event for Saturday, October 10th, 2020, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Moffat?
Sure, I'll move it. Mayor, you're breaking up a little bit, so to hear everything you said there.
Sorry.
I don't know
Okay.
I don't know if it's my end or your end. I'm not sure.
Can I have a seconder
Well,
from Councillor Fellner?
Also move it, so I'm okay with moving it, but I just wanted to let you know. Sorry.
Is anyone else having trouble hearing me?
No.
Oh, it's just, okay, so maybe it's your end.
It's Foley Community Center.
Yeah, is there any discussion on the motion to close Victoria Street East and West and do the appropriate notification? All in favor of the motion on the floor?
Aye.
Great, okay, that's carried. So, Linda, thank you very much for all you do for the community, and good luck with public health. And if you need anything further, we'll start working on the street closure issues. Craig.
Thank you.
So thank you for all you do for the community.
You're very welcome. It takes a community to make a community, and that's always been one of the important things that the market has tried to do, is to be part of the community and work with it. So thank you very much for allowing me to come and address you. We've been doing the Thanksgiving market for a number of years, and I'm happy to keep coming to council if need be, and hopefully we'll have a successful market this year.
Well, I hope you will, and I hope we get some sense of normalcy back by next year.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Linus. And you can
Gail,
just click in
join the
bottom-
meeting.
Yeah, you can say goodbye in the bottom of the corner of the meeting. You'll see a little red square that says leave meeting.
Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we've got some road allowances. Council will now consider the following shore road allowance applications. Shore road allowance application RAS 2015-0013F for Bruin on Otter Lake bylaw number 2020-070, and shore road allowance application RAS-2015-0014-F for Canistra on Otter Lake bylaw number 2020-070. Have there been any written objections received?
No written objections have been received.
Steve, do you want to introduce any of these, or shall I just read them?
I think they're non-issue files, so you can happy to read.
Proceed, okay, if anybody has questions, you can ask them. So here's the first one, that bylaw number 2020-070, being a bylaw to close, stop up, and sell portions of original shore road allowance application number RAS-2015-0013-F for Bruin, and RAS-2015-0014-F for Canestra, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Cole
Also move.
and a seconder from Councillor Fellner? Okay, I saw your lips move. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Sign these later.
So these are the deemings that go along with them.
So these are the deemings that go along with them. The first one, that bylaw number 2020-071, being a bylaw to deem Lot 11 of Plan M-2220 pursuant to Section 50(4) of the Planning Act, not to be a plan of subdivision, property roll number 4903-030-005-00600, file number D 2020-0002-F for Bruin, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Vincent?
I so move.
Thank you, and seconded by Councillor Collins.
I'll second that, Mayor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. That's carried. The next one, that bylaw number 2020-072, being a bylaw to deem Lot 12 of Plan M-220 pursuant to Section 50(4) of the Planning Act not to be on a plan of subdivision. Property roll number 4903-003-005-00500, file number D 2020-0006-F for Canistra, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Moffat?
I so move.
And seconded by Councillor Osborne. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, that's carried. Okay. We are moving on to 8B. I'll read it, and then I'd like Director Stone to speak to it a little bit. That as per recommendation of staff report DPS-PL-2020-079, the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve in principle concession road allowance application number RAC-2020-0007-H for McKinnon, and direct staff to commence the public process for stopping up, closure, and sale of a portion of the concession road allowance. Could I have a motion from Terry Fellner?
So moved.
Thank you. And seconder from Councillor Collins.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, Steve, do you want to take us through this, and then we'll open it up to discussion?
Sure. So, just to make sure I get this on my, the concession road allowance. So this one, it's.
Page 66.
Yep, no, I'm looking at the key map. So in essence, if you look at the air photo, the gentleman wants to build a garage up on the plateau area where the sort of turnaround is right now. And one of the issues that we were looking at was, is there historical use to this particular concession road allowance? And what we know is the property to the south actually gains access by another route, so that's a non-issue. And the Skidoo Association actually uses lands again further to the south as well to maintain connectivity to their trail system. So based on that, we didn't feel that there was an issue here.
I see one question from Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I think Director Stone's probably addressed this. When I look at the picture on page 67, I'm presuming that roadway where you have the red rectangle and then you have a building and then the roadway, I'm presuming that's the snowmobile trail that you're referring to, Steve?
Well, yeah, it's if you have to, sadly, the
Join the meeting.
Doesn't have the Skidoo Trail over, but it actually is further up and to the east. So the road that you're seeing actually, that's an industrial quarry / old quarry back there, pit, and that's their service road. So.
Oh, okay. So we're not, there's no impact on the existing snowmobile trail that goes along 12th concession.
That was when this first was brought to my attention almost 2 years ago. That was my main concern, but we verified that the trail has actually been relocated and not using this old concession road allowance.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Osborne.
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Steve. Steve, I see the turnaround, it looks to be about midpoint of the section of CRA to be purchased. Is that where he plans on building the garage, right there in that turnaround area?
It'll be behind his house.
Okay, so will the turnaround be affected by his owning this portion of the concession road? And where would they turn around otherwise?
For lack of a better word, he's actually been squatting on the concession road. It's not our turnaround, it's his turnaround.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you.
Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, Director Stone, a couple questions. This is a 66-foot wide road allowance?
That's right.
I presume, and we're proposing to sell all 66 feet to the subject land to the north?
Yes.
Has the owner to the south been contacted to see if he wanted to buy half that?
Not formally through the township. That'll be the process that our solicitor does now. But as I understand it, to the applicant, he has contacted his neighbor to the south, and there wasn't any interest.
Okay, and then it's showing on this map that you're going to basically sell the entire road allowance from the, I would assume from the property limit on Lake Joseph Road to the road right of way limit on the 12th concession. But the piece of property that we're selling extends beyond the back line of the subject, so who owns the land behind him? Like,
Well,
Typically you'd sell
Yeah.
the allowance to an abutting landowner, right? So,
yeah, and as per the previous question, part of the due diligence of our solicitors to ensure concurrence for the sale. And the reason why he's asking to purchase all that, it actually allows him to have access to the other road as well. So sort of a drive-through option for him.
yeah, but the, to that point, the guy behind him may want
Yeah,
some
and
more land, like, I mean, that's.
and I think that
But that's covered off as the next part of the process if we agree to do this, right?
and say, for example, and this has happened on other concession road allowances, people do come forward and express an interest, and then at that point, then we say, okay, fine, we'll make adjustments to the sale. Then.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, I agree with the sale. Can you tell me, do we have a flat rate or a standard rate we sell this junk for, or what?
Yeah, typically what we do is we look for a vacant lot that's sold recently, and based on the area of that vacant lot, we do a proportion on the concession road allowance. So it's as close to a real market value as we can get.
Thank you.
Okay, there being no further discussion, can I call for a vote on this motion? All in favor? Dale Finson?
Aye.
Carrie?
Do you have a mover?
Yes, we have a mover and a seconder.
Okay.
Beautiful, nice and beautiful.
Okay, this is item 9A. The Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the staff reports as presented on the agenda for August 24th, 2020 meeting of council. Can I have a motion from Councillor Fellner?
So moved.
You. Seconded by Councillor Collins.
I'll second that, Mayor.
All in favor of receiving the staff report?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And I will read this and then I will ask Craig to speak to it. That bylaw number 2020-081, being a bylaw to establish rules governing the proceedings of council, the calling of meetings, and the conduct of members, staff, and the public, and to repeal bylaw number 2020-033, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Moffat?
I so move.
And seconded by Art Coles.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Craig to speak to it. And then we'll open it up for questions.
At the August 4th meeting, council passed a resolution asking that we prepare amendments to the procedural bylaw that would allow you to continue the electronic participation, to be reviewed again, second meeting in October, to determine whether or not to continue past the end of October. So that's what this amendment to the bylaw allows. And the second part to that would be, if council passes this bylaw, you would terminate the emergency.
We have a question from Councillor Moffat.
Craig, does this bylaw have to be published in the newspaper?
No.
Councillor Osborne.
There are there's
Oh,
exceptions.
sorry, I didn't hear what Craig said.
Oh, the
Good,
answer
no.
was no.
No.
Oh, okay.
We are already doing electronic participation. This also has some minor amendments you might have noticed, because our original one during the beginning of COVID was teleconference. This now brings us into the video conference, so to speak.
Right. No, if it had to go through the newspaper process, but by that time we would be in October.
No, we don't have to do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Osborne, you have the floor.
Okay, so this, Mayor, is, will be effective till the end of October. Beyond that time, is there any ability, Craig, for a member to participate electronically, even though council has reconvened in council chambers? Possibly due to injury, sickness, or something. Will we be able to make that exception on an ongoing basis once the emergency is done?
That will all depend on the council review in mid-October and what
Okay.
your direction is to staff.
Okay, so we can discuss that once this expires in October.
It doesn't really expire. It has a review date of October. If council decides to leave it as is, we would leave it. If council decides to change it, we would change it.
Yeah, well, yeah, in a sense it does, because we'd have to renew it if we don't. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, we have no other questions. Can I ask for a vote? All in favor of passing this new bylaw, 2020-081? Councillor Finson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, it's carried. Thank you. This is,
That lists the emergency.
this is the lifts the emergency, which we declared a few weeks ago in order to continue the electronic. Now we don't need that emergency, so I need to read the whole thing, probably. Yeah, okay. Whereas the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, RSO 1990 E.9, as amended Section 4, bracket 1, Declaration of Emergency, provides that the head of the council of a municipality may declare that an emergency exists in the municipality or in any part thereof, and may take action and make such orders as he or she considers necessary and are not contrary to law to implement the emergency plan of the municipality and to protect property and the health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants of the emergency area. And whereas on the 23rd day of July 2020, a declaration of emergency was declared in the Township of Seguin. And whereas council has deemed the need for the declaration of emergency no longer exists. And whereas the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, RSO 1990 CE.9, as amended Section 4, bracket 2, Declaration as to the termination of emergency, provides that the head of council or the council of a municipality may at any time declare that an emergency has terminated. Therefore, it resolves that the council of the Township of Seguin, in accordance with the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act, RSO 1990 CE.9, as amended Section 4, bracket 2, Declaration as to the termination of the emergency, does hereby declare that the declaration of emergency of July 23rd,
Join the meeting.
in the Township of Seguin has terminated effectively. Could I have a motion from Councillor Cole?
So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Osborne.
Second?
All in favor of terminating the emergency? Councillor
Aye.
Vincent? Okay.
Aye.
thank- Good. And before you, as item 9B, you have a schedule for meetings for the next year. That Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the schedule of regular meetings of council for the year 2021, attached to Schedule A to this resolution. Could I have a motion from Councillor Fellner? Okay, thank you, Terry. And seconded by Councillor Collins.
Yes, I'll second that, Mayor.
All in favor of adopting the
Aye.
schedule? Okay,
Aye.
great, that's carried. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Sound like a downeaster there, Gil.
Okay, we have a motion.
I know.
Of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin, does hereby approve in principle the current planned future expenditures outlined in staff report TR 2020-013, Safe Restart Funding, copy attached, and direct staff to implement those plans in accordance with the township's purchasing and hiring policies. Could I have a motion from Councillor Simpson?
I so move.
And seconded by Councillor Moffat.
I'll second that.
Okay, Michelle, do you want to speak to it, and then we'll open it up to discussion?
Absolutely. So last week we were notified that we were receiving $609,700 under the Safe Restart funding. That's the $695 million that was shared between all of the municipalities in Ontario on a household basis. As it stands right now, we've spent just over $120,000 so far in COVID-related expenses. There are some projects in here that we've listed that we would like to go ahead with. Things like touchless plumbing refits in all of our buildings, keyless electronic entry for all of the buildings. We're still going to have to purchase some additional speed guards. The cleaning supplies are ongoing, obviously. And we also, based on the safe reopening plan for the arena, Community Services would like to hire one individual who would work Monday to Friday from 4 to 12 to assist in strictly cleaning and sanitizing the dressing room so that we could get the ice rented safely. The other item that has come up since we got this funding, Councillor Osborne has advised that EMS has had some serious excess expenses as a result of COVID-19, and they will be probably levying a one-time charge on all of the municipalities. They pay 25%. So that's looking to be, based on the numbers that Councillor Osborne gave us, to be about $100,000 to $125,000 that will be our share of that excess levy, which can be used in this $609,000. So.
Okay, Councillor Moffat?
Just a question with regards to the donation to the West Prairie Sound Hospital. Are we, I know it's included in our list, but it really was a donation, and I'm just wondering how we're buttonholing it into as part of COVID-19 expenses.
Right now, all I was trying to do was to give you an idea of how much we had spent.
Yeah.
We actually have not seen the specific
detail
we can spend this on, but we do have to, anything that we don't spend has to go into a reserve and can be used next for any other COVID-19 expenses. So right now, it's just in there for information. If we don't need it for that, we can use it for other things.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle.
Councillor Osborne.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. This is a great report. This is an excellent opportunity for us to go modern in our touchless appliances for not just COVID, but down the road in the future for general hygiene. I think a lot of municipalities are way behind in this, and this will bring us into the modern age. Great report. Thanks. I'm all for it.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Then I'll call a vote. All in favor of passing the staff report and basically getting them working on it?
Aye.
Councillor Simpson? Great. Okay, that's carried. Oh, but there's a second part to this, okay? That bylaw number 2020-86 be a bylaw to establish a reserve for safe restart excess funds is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Rod Osborne?
So moved.
Okay, and seconded by Terry Filner.
Seconded.
All in favor of setting up this reserve? We'll see how we go.
Aye, aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye. Aye, bye.
And I think we have Dominique next on water quality. If you could fill us in, Dominique.
Yep, this is just our regular semi-annual report that comes to council, just letting you know that all of our water systems are working as they should be. The only difference in this report is we've actually put in 3 new UV systems in the Public Works Department in Foley, Orville, and Rosso, I believe. So those are new ones. That means staff can drink right from the tap, which they haven't been able to do. So everything is good and as it should be.
Okay, Councillor Osborne, you have a question for Dominique?
Yeah, just an update on our genders, our bi-gender washroom at the community hall. How's it working, Dominic? Is it all, it's working well or what?
The new Rasa one?
Yeah, I haven't been in.
Yeah,
How's it
no,
working?
so far so good. I don't know if it's getting a whole lot of use yet. People have to still find it, and I think we're going to put some better signage.
I was just going to suggest a little sign out there.
That's right.
WC would be good. How often do we have to supply water to the tank there? Because it is a holding tank, correct?
Interestingly enough, we actually budgeted to do it every 2 weeks. We have not had to change or add the water yet.
So you must have blow flush toilets and automatic shutoffs on the sinks.
It's it's actually
okay, good. Thank you.
better than we thought. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominique, for keeping us healthy and everything. And now I think we're going to go to Steve for the report on Clapperton. So I will read this first and get a motion and seconder, then we'll have Steve talk about it and open it up for questions. At bylaw number 2020-068, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-010-006-10052, application number R 2020-0002-H for Clapperton at 91 Topajo Road is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Terry Felder?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Collins.
I'll second that, Mayor.
And Steve, can you bring us up to date?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you to the rest of the council. So this one was brought to council's attention on a couple of occasions. The main issue was the width of the boathouse, and the Clappertons were asked to consider a shoreline a structure like a gazebo for sunshade. And they went out and reassessed the topography out there, and it was deemed that that's not feasible because it would require blasting. Subsequent to that, they came back and they reduced the overall area of the sun deck on both the front and back side of the deck. And staff had a second look at what they provided to justify it, and we felt it was a reasonable solution given the fact that they can't have sunshade structures on the shoreline. So with that, the application is recommended for approval.
And the applicant and the applicant's agent are available on the call if we have questions for them. I see a question from Councillor Osborne.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Steve, you mentioned a reduction on the sun deck. What is the reduction, please?
Well, good question. I would have to take a... So originally, the sun deck, maximum sun deck is 1215, and I will look at the next report.
600 feet.
So let's see. I'm going to say it was reduced by maybe 40 square meters. I'm just looking for the actual numbers. Yeah, 215.
I'm just pulling it up as well on our drawing so I can give you an accurate number.
Yes, maximum increase of deck would be permitted 168 square meters. So that's, I think, what the revision was.
A reduction of 68 square meters?
Looks like that, but the applicant's here. She's she's an architect, she'll be able to confirm that.
Yeah. 700 square feet.
Is that what that is, Terry? 700 square feet? I'm old school. Yeah.
730, 68, 731. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, so on the actual deck area, we are reduced by a little bit over 250 square feet. And then as well as the bridge then added some surplus reductions. So that's about 25 square meters or so on just the deck area.
Sophie, are there any other questions? Staff is recommending that we approve this. We have a motion and a seconder. All in favor of approving?
Aye.
You, going to Councillor Osborne, are you voting? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Clobbertons for your patience in this. Enjoy your new boathouse.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I have a motion that Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant provisional approval to consent application numbers B 2020-0014-F and B 2020-0015-F for Colter, subject to the conditions set out in the decisions. Could I have a motion from Councillor Finson
I so move.
and seconded by Darrell Moffat?
I'll second that.
And Steve, could you take us through this one a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, to the rest of the council. So this was considered by council at the public meeting at the last meeting of council. There was no public comments received. One of the questions raised by council was, would this affect recreational carrying capacity? And the answer was no. The property already has a dwelling that would have been counted in the recreational carrying capacity. The severance will actually sever the commercial property, which council rezoned last year, from the residential property. So the residential appearance on the lake will remain unchanged.
Councillor Osborne has a question, but I don't see him on screen. Well, I'm
Let's
going to
go.
assume his hand is up by accident. Any other questions? All in favor? Councillor Fisk?
Aye.
Okay, and that is carried. Thank you.
Here, we have two people that are coming into the next,
Oh,
the applicant and the applicant. Or, no, sorry, just the applicant, Mr. Oldham.
okay, so we have the applicant, but I will read the motion and get a motion and seconder, and then we'll open it up to discussion. That bylaw number 2020-082, being a bylaw to validate the title of a lot within the Township of Seguin, application number B 2019-0024-H for 2540659 Ontario Inc. at 141 Winterberry Lane is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Cole?
Also move.
Thank you. And seconded by Terry Felder, okay. And Steve, I will first ask you to introduce it, and then I think we have the owner and his agent on screen. Oh, Howard Oldham, but who's?
The other one is another.
Oh, no, that's okay, just Howard Oldham, okay. Steve, do you want to introduce it?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council. Council deals with validations of title probably once every 2 years, and it's usually a function of, again, just what the title says, verifying that the lot is actually the lot that it is. If council recalls, this matter was before you probably a year and a half ago and it was involving a lot addition that reduced the subject lot in size to its present configuration. And as a result of some actions happening at the registry office, the simple answer is the lines got fuzzy. And the validation of title, what it does is just verifies what council's actions were a year and a half ago as being correct today. So that's what the request is that you pass the validation of title. And that means the lot can be conveyed with no title issues. Thank you.
Mr. Oldham, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I think he explained it very well.
Are there any other questions from councillors? There being none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of passing this?
Aye.
Councillor Collins, okay, and that is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Oldham, for your patience.
Thank
It
you.
is
Take
carried.
care.
1053, hang on here. Okay, so this is a report from staff, from Chris Mahan, that we are receiving for information. I have asked Chris to print this big on the plotter because it doesn't look very good on 8.5 by 11. And he says he'll do it and put it up on a wall here somewhere. Steve, do you want to speak to it a little bit?
Yes, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council, this is staff just being proactive with council's interest in developing a broadband strategy, as well as some of the applications it's dealing from tower entities like Bell. And so what we did is Chris was able to sort of do some research, plot where all the various tower locations are up and down more or less the 400 corridor for council's benefit as they consider applications going forward. So thank you.
Councillor Moffat, you have a question?
Yeah, the question I had, I actually sent an email to Steve. I was wondering if we could get addresses for the towers or some sort of reference points, because it's hard to tell exactly what we're talking about in some of them because of the proximity. They're all pretty close, and we don't have. And I recognize that this is a smaller version of a much bigger puzzle. I don't know if that's a possibility to add that to the legend or not. That was all.
We can do that. I mean, it was one of those things that we were working pretty quickly, and this was our first, I want to say. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I guess whatever you can do to locate them. If he does get it up on the plotter, you'll have more room. Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor.
I think you just turned yourself to mute from speaking, so unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to put my hand, Steve. Yesterday, when I was out in the boat, I noticed two towers, or I think they're towers, because they're stuck up way above the tree line. And if you look on your map, if you look at the shoreline on Lake Joseph between Tower 18 and Tower 21, so they'd be on the shoreline. They were come through on the shoreline behind that, like almost sort of on the left side of Hamer Bay, I think is where they were. I might have to go back out and have a look. But I'd never noticed them before.
Okay.
And there's two of them, and they're not that far apart.
Sure.
So I was wondering if you maybe could.
Yeah, we can
see if my eyes are bad, or maybe there's a couple towers there we missed.
Yeah, and we've had some ground truthing already on this map, so I'll I will look into it and update it accordingly.
Yeah, I never noticed them before.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I know Chris really rushed to get this through, so please pass on our gratitude to do that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He's got pictures here, but okay. We have a motion before us that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant an exemption for 202 Blue Lake Road, property roll number 4903-030-02706-0000 for DAG pursuant to section 5.1 of bylaw number 2008-105, being a bylaw to prohibit or regulate the placing or dumping or removal of fill in areas of the Township of Seguin, subject to the conditions as outlined in the staff report number DPSPL 2020-091. Could I have a motion from Councillor Collins?
Yes, I'll move that motion forward.
And seconded by Councillor Vincent?
I second that.
Thank you. And Steve, do you want to speak to it? And I believe, is it Mr. Daigle on the line with us?
Mr. Naughton,
Mr. Naughton.
who's, I believe, sitting over.
Okay, Steve, do you want to give us some background on this?
Yeah, if council will go to appendix or schedule A, so that would be, I guess that's 263 in the staff report. So this was a letter from Mr. Daigle after council considered this matter a month or so ago. He revised his application for exemption to reflect a recreational trail. So still filling in the EP zone, but at a slightly reduced footprint because it wouldn't be as wide as driveway. And so again, he's modified his request and has presented it to council as such. In essence, this is one of those requests where council knows the bylaw and that it has to grant relief from the bylaw to allow for this fill to happen. We, as staff, have looked at alternatives, and one of the alternatives that we've been discussing with Mr. Daigle's agent Al Shaw is the idea of putting in a elevated boardwalk on piles. And so you'll see that in the staff report as well. But how the letter was drafted when Mr. Daigle filed it was for trail on gravel with some culverts. So as I said, we here haven't done any further peer review on this. You'll note that in the report there's an estimate of almost $1,500 for it for Mr. Shaw's addendum to be reviewed, and we haven't asked for that because given the cost, and it's really an exemption request of the bylaw before council. So it's really for your consideration and our direction after that fact.
Can I just ask the people on the call to clarify their position on this? John Jackson is on the call, and I believe we have one other individual on the call, Mark Naughton. Could you indicate to us what your position on this is? How about you go first, John?
Yes, thanks. Anne, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm just on the phone portion of it. I'm happy to speak to it, and thank you for taking my call. I know it's not an open meeting, but the interesting twist in the whole kind of history of this is that a recreation trail is permitted in an EP zone. So while council seemed to have some reservations about allowing a full-fledged driveway and its attendant mitigative measures, we decided to reapproach this with what was permitted in an EP trail, and that's what Stephen is talking about in terms of keeping the mitigation measures, but putting an elevated platform on which we could cross this 40 meters of wetland without any impact. So rather than be blocked out, if you like, completely, we're hopeful that consistent with what's allowed in an EP zone, we would get our exemption for this recreation trail.
And Mr. Naughton, could you explain to us your interest in the property? Hi.
Oh, I can tell you that Mr. Dagg, Madam Mayor, has an offer to sell the land to Mr. Naughton, who wants to continue with the pursuit of being able to get some form of access to the shoreline portion of his property. I know he's on the line because we spoke today that he was hoping to listen in, so he may.
Yes, he's on the line, and perhaps you could explain, Mr. Naughton, your interest in the property and when you will become the owner. You need to unmute your microphone.
There you go.
Can people hear him? We still can't
No,
hear you. I don't.
he's muted, but he shows unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi. So yes, I am interested in purchasing the property, and I care a lot about the environment as well, and I love the area where this particular property is located in. My wife and I would like to retire to this cottage at some point, hopefully have my mother come and visit, who's in her 90s, as well as my children, who I hope will have grandchildren, and will be able to visit the property without having the boat access that we have right now, or that Mr. Dagg has right now. So I understand, and I have spoken with the environmental consultant Al Shaw regarding the different alternatives, as well as with John Jackson. So I understand that there are two alternatives that you have been, or there's an alternative you've been considering, and there's a second one, which is the possibility of having a boardwalk. So the boardwalk is a more expensive option, of course, and may provide some additional limitations relative to access. However, I would be very hopeful that council would be willing to grant us one of those two alternatives in order for us to be able to access the property in a way that also in a way that is sensitive to the environment.
And when do you take possession of the property?
It's in September. It's, I think, mid-September.
And just a question, is your offer to purchase dependent on anything council decides?
I'm going on faith, Mayor. I'm going on faith that that something will be granted. In other words, I've provided an unconditional offer.
Okay. Councillor Moffat, we have three councillors that want to ask questions.
Thank you, Mayor. This is maybe to Steve, I think. Do we have any restrictions on the width of the recreational trail? This is 4 meters, which is about 13 feet, which a small car could cross outside of a snowmobile or an ATV, and someone who's 90 years old, getting this distance will be a challenge. So do we have any ability to, let's say it only could be 2 meters as opposed to 4?
Most definitely. If council wants to grant an exception, they can specify the width of any trail. Typically, you're right. I asked our own recreational staff about their boardwalks, and they're sized sufficiently for, I think you call it a side-by-side.
Yeah, so which is about 5 feet.
Yeah, so they, typically they would be in like a golf cart size. I would say would be the standard that you would see. Conservation authorities would have it so that you could get a motorized wheelchair on both sides, like coming towards each other, they could pass without fear of crashing into each other. So.
Okay, so my next question is, Steve, if this trail is granted, what Does the building department, are they involved in this building or not in this building, but in this building of the trailer? What happens if that is accepted?
Yeah, typically they'll get involved where the deck structure is higher than what's required under the code. Let's say it's a 3 feet elevated structure. I'm sure they'll need to have guards in place. So they would be involved in issuing a permit when it becomes an OBC issue.
So do we know if it's going to become an Ontario building code issue? It's hard to tell from the pictures themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
it just looks level to the land.
Yeah, my guess is, given that that has guards in it, that it would be. But the specs, you can certainly ask any sort of drawings to be spec'd out for council's review and approval.
Thank you.
Councillor Osborne.
Okay, I'm a little confused, Mayor. Who owns the property in question currently?
Mr. Dagg.
And Mr. Dagg is selling the property to Mr. Naughton?
That's correct.
Okay, this is just a recent development then. Is there no way Mr. Naughton can access his property as historically was done through the neighbor's drive?
I believe the access is by boat only.
There was access by the neighbor to get to this property.
I got cut off. That's all.
That was cut off several years ago. I believe it was construction.
That was cut off. Okay. So I'm confused about the definition of a recreational trail versus a driveway. Because in the same report, it says access historically has been achieved by using the driveway at 222. Okay. Mr. Dagg would like to build his own driveway. So they're calling it a driveway there. And further on, it talks about driveway twice. So is it a driveway or is it a trail? By the sounds of 4 meters, as Councillor Moffat has pointed out, you can have a small vehicle cross there. So I guess what I'm trying to get my head around is the trail. Is the trail, a narrow trail, okay because there's a parking area on the other side of the wetland in order to park and then transition to a 4-wheeler or whatever?
Director Stone, I'll ask you to answer, but my understanding is it's a different kind of construction that does not involve fill. It's more like a very, very long dock. Is that correct?
Councillor Osborne, the request as it was filed by Mr. Dagg, actually a trail based on granular fill and culverts. And by the drawing in the report is 4 meters wide. And
okay, but it was referred to twice as a driveway. A new causeway, driveway with culverts, right?
Originally, when the previous request, yes, it was referred to as a driveway.
It was a roadbed filling in the wetland, right?
Previous.
The culverts, yes. Okay, now it's a trail. Is there going to be like weight specs on this, weight limitations like on any bridge? Because it becomes a bridge in essence.
Well, that's the thing. If you permit a boardwalk, for example, it won't be engineered in such a way that it would support a vehicle, car, or a truck.
Boardwalk infers walking, people walking, person, maybe a couple 100 pounds. Any kind of vehicle, be it a side-by-side or a small car, now that entails a whole different weight limit situation. So can we be clear what is going to be used to transit this proposed boardwalk on helical piers? What type of vehicle will cross that? That's what I need to know.
Do you have a reply to that, Mr. Naughton?
Yes. So I would like to be able to have occasional access with something like a side-by-side ATV vehicle. For example, if my mother came up to visit, then I could get her on that ATV to cross the boardwalk in order to bring her to the cottage from a parking area, which is on the other side.
So that would be That would be, your weight would be limited to the weight of a side-by-side, for example.
Something like that, exactly.
No vehicles, no cars.
No cars.
Okay. And so I understand you've embarked upon some sort of an environmental assessment to determine the impact of the helical piers?
I spoke with Al Shaw, who's done the environmental assessment previously, where a fill was involved. And what he's indicated is that if you don't do a fill and you're actually putting helical piers, that you're actually not putting any fill into the water. You're allowing the water to flow, and you're allowing light underneath the boardwalk as well, which is much less than the previous report.
Understood. But you're still drilling into the EP mud zone. How many piers would have to be installed to support this ATV / boardwalk? How many piers?
I'm actually fairly new to this, so I don't actually have an answer to that. There was a proposal that had been provided, forwarded to me for a construction company which does this kind of work in the area. So I can have that responded to, but I don't actually know.
Okay, I just think, in summary, I guess, Mayor, I just think we're a little premature on approving something that we don't have all the details on yet. It sounds like a better idea and a better alternative, and I'm for that, because I'm all for not touching EPs, but we need more information to go further. So I don't know how you want to handle it.
Well, I first want to hear from the other councillors that have had their hands up. So Councillor Cole.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And I do support this request. It is in my ward, and I visited the site along with Steve and one of the planners. I obviously prefer the least intrusion into the EP area, which would be the piers. And the only other condition I would put is that every effort is made to preserve whatever wildlife, whether it be turtles, whatever wildlife is in the wet area. That's the only thing that I would caution. Otherwise, I think it's a reasonable request. And there is a turnaround area where the vehicles stop now with currently a temporary garage there. So it is a stopping point where then the ATVs would go from there to the home.
Right.
I think it's a really good solution.
Councillor Felder.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Steve, the original, the proposal for the fill recreational trail at 4 meters wide and 40 meters long gives it a footprint of about 160 square meters of EP. That would be the footprint on the EP. And have 4 culverts that are approximately 36 inches in diameter to allow passage, equalization culverts for animals. So do we have a total area on this EP zone? Like how big an impact are we talking
about? Well, the EP.
What percent, I guess what I'm getting is what percentage of the EP zone is this thing actually going to take up?
Well, let me see if I can pull that up on the drawings. If you were to go to 261, when you look at the whole EP complex that's there, both on either side, it's quite a large feature.
Right.
You know, we're talking 5%, 2%. It would be down in that range.
Right.
So in terms of its overall coverage, you know, there's quite a bit of wetland above and some below it. So the issue really is when you put fill in, you're disturbing the functionality of an open water system. Right now, that's what you see there. If you were to site, it's rather open. It's contiguous with the bay and the open water on Otter Lake. So that's what's happening when you put fill in it. It cuts it off.
Right. So okay, I get you there. But I mean, so the biggest impact when you put fill in is the biggest concern is the preservation of wildlife, right? You know, so it would have to be properly fenced and well evacuated from the is typically what happens. The only problem that I have with the helical piles, I mean, helical piles are an interesting, piling system and are relatively new, but they need to be screwed into the ground. And you screw them in until they meet a certain resistance, and then they have enough bearing pressure to hold whatever they're designed to hold. In order to screw them into the ground, you need a piece of heavy equipment. So, either way you play it, unless you're going to screw them in the ground with a helicopter or something, I mean, you're going to have to get into this line to screw them in. So my way, plus then you're dealing with a structure, and, it just seems to me like an awful lot of nonsense for, a simple little trail, in order to access a piece of property. So I guess what I'm saying, as long as we're satisfied that the area is properly delineated from the wildlife is removed properly by someone qualified, like the biosphere people or whoever, then, I mean, I don't really have a problem with this little bit of fill in this area. I think the helical pile thing is, to me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay, so what I hear you, just to summarize, you would prefer to go back to the original proposal with the fill and the culverts. Is that correct, Councillor Feldman?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue the last time, Madam Mayor, was that, the OP didn't allow a driveway. Fair enough. So the applicant's not looking for a driveway. He's just simply asking for something that can access his land. So you want to make sure that it's wide enough that people aren't going to fall off the edge of it or drive off the edge of it or whatever they're going to do. And 4 meters is a reasonable width. It's not really that wide. So to me, it's a lot to do about, as long as it's occupying a very small portion of this EP zone, and it's done correctly, and the fill is correct in that it's rock fill, and we're not putting a bunch of silt in the lake and that, then no, I don't have any problem.
Okay, Councillor Collins.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I happen to agree with Councillor Coles and Councillor Fellner. There is limited impact in the EP zone, what I could see, and a 4 meter wide trail is not a very wide trail, especially if you're going to be using a side by side. So I'm for. I don't have any problems with this at all. Either, like, Phil is fine with me.
Okay.
Versus the contract, as Councillor Fellner's right, it will take heavy equipment to come in with the boardwalk. Thank you.
Mr. Osborne.
Okay, here we are, we're going back to filling in wetlands again. That, first of all, in our official plan, it is not allowed. It's right in our official plan. You are not allowed to put fill in a wetland, period. Full stop, period. Steve, I think you can attest to that. I'll quote you previous precedent, and that was the Teed Sullivan property off 141 trying to get to Gilbank Lake. Very similar. A couple 100 yards of fill across a wetland flowing between Little Whitefish and Gilbank Lake. We denied that. M&R Bracebridge advised us not to do it. But we've got councillors now that are thinking it's no big deal, just a little bit of wetland. You do it for one, you do it for all. Either change the OP and allow wetlands to be filled, or go by the OP and disallow. I am against fill. I don't care what the mitigation is. You're still changing the topography, you're changing the flows of water, and you're going to risk the environment. Thank you.
Councillor Fellner, do you still have your hand up?
Oh, sorry, I'm having trouble with my
okay.
my
Councillor
program.
Vincent, do you have anything to add? I know you're on the telephone.
Well, I would say that, believe it or not, I agree with Councillor Osborne on this. I agree that no fill, and I know they might need heavy equipment, but it will have to be monitored, and things will just have to be put back the way they were. I think the second plan is a good plan, and it will be less impact on the environment. And so I do agree with Councillor Osborne that fill is just a no-no. I don't think we should be putting fill in there. Yeah, it may not be a big deal, but it is a big deal in the end. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor that it's moved by Ted Collins and seconded by Gail, that as I read it, the motion is basically for the fill trail. We have on page 260 a drawing of, what they call it, helical pier trail.
Which is it?
So I'm going to call a vote on the first one that we've got a motion and second on, if that's correct pardon?
I suggest you ask Director of Planning to verify that motion.
Okay.
Versus, because that's a strict fill bylaw exemption.
Okay, so Director Stone, I'm asking you I'm going to read this motion. All this does is give an exemption to a fill bylaw. It does not specify the type of construction or helical piles or anything else. If you wanted to do that, I think we'd have to amend this. So let me read the motion that's on the floor.
Oh, wait a second.
What's the issue?
Well,
I just want to reread it.
Oh, okay. Then go ahead. I want that. Okay.
I just want to reread it and make sure Director Stone and I are on the same page, and Council.
Okay.
That Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant an exemption for 202 Blue Lake Road, property roll number 4903-030-006, DAG, pursuant to section 5.1 of bylaw number 2008-105, being a bylaw to prohibit or regulate the placing or dumping or removal of fill in areas of the Township of Seguin, subject to the conditions outlined in staff report DPS PL 2020-091. So I read this as an exemption to fill bylaw that doesn't mention any piers. Is that correct, Director Stone?
Well, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council, the request was for the fill to create the recreational trail and culverts. So that's, and you're granting the motion, although not as specific as it should be, would be for Mr. Dagg's request, which is the 4 meter wide trail.
Original request.
Well, I mean, it's original in the sense that it requires fill, but it's slightly reduced. It's not a driveway. So the schematic of what the request is as it's, if you look at the recommendation, is figure 1. That's what was requested. And if council grants the fill exemption request, they're granting construction of that 4 meter wide trail, vegetated to 2-to-1 slope along the bank, and it has 4 culverts in it. So.
Okay, so we could amend this to talk about figure 1 in the staff report.
Yes, that was the request that we received most recently, and that's what Mr. Dagg in his letter is asking for.
Okay, Councillor Fellner, you have a question?
Yeah, for Director Stone. So I'm reading your report, and the conclusion is, Steve, is what your conclusion is, that we're receiving this for information?
No.
Or am I reading the wrong page here? There's a lot of documents here.
With regards to conclusion 8, you receive, that's the way we summarize things, that you receive a report for information, and then that you as council consider what the owner is requesting, which is the recreational trail with the placement of fill in the EP zoned area. So again, when you look at the recommendation of the report, it is the normal room, the number 1 in that recommendation. So in essence, Terry, Councillor Fellner, you're in support of A in the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Osborne,
I got it.
Thank you. So, Mayor, through you, Steve, I see in this case, number 8, you don't make a recommendation.
No, I mean,
You come to a conclusion, but without a recommendation. It's for information from that point of view, correct?
yes. I mean, if you had to ask me what I would prefer, it would be B, which is the boardwalk.
Okay. So, Mayor, before you call that vote, would you make it recorded, please?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
But we have the motion on the floor right now that refers to figure 1, which is A. So we will count a recorded vote on that and see what happens. So, clerk, can you, and I've added to the bottom of the motion, subject to the conditions as outlined in staff report DPS PL-2020-091 as described in figure 1.
Yes.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So A is the one that we said no to the last time, the road, the driveway, and B is the piles, the no-fill one?
It's the technicality of the first one, but much reduced in size.
Yeah, so it's a boardwalk, not a driveway.
No, it's still
Yeah,
Phil.
but it's
This
a
is very
trail.
confusing.
Well, it's a trail, but it uses fill as
Yes.
outlined on page 257
And culverts.
on page figure 1. So
Okay,
that's
so
what's
I'm,
going first.
yeah,
That's what-
I really don't know. I'm confused.
Okay,
anyway.
you have your council package?
No, I don't. I couldn't download it, so I can't see it. I only got part of my council package. I didn't get it all. So I don't,
Well, this
have
one
that,
is-
so.
This one is
But that's okay.
involving the fill.
I'm just gonna, I can't vote if I can't see it, because what we just talked about it sounds totally different when Steve just said it. What we talked about was these piles and no fill, and now he's talking about the fill bylaw, so I'm really confused. I thought we were talking about something totally different than the last time, which was a driveway, which used a lot of fill, which Councillor Osborne talked about. And then this one was different. Is that what he was bringing to council this time was different than the first one? It wasn't a driveway, it was a boardwalk or a trail or,
Director Stone's going to attempt to answer.
okay, thank you.
To Councillor Vincent. So the first one that we dealt with 2 months ago was a driveway. It was based on fill and culverts. The request that is before council today from Mr. Dagg is a reduced footprint. They're now calling it a recreational trail. It is fill and it does have 4 culverts. So what the alternative is a non-fill solution, which would be a boardwalk on piles.
Okay, now where does that come in? Is that part of this discussion?
We're not voting on that.
Oh, okay.
Director Stone has the
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not voting on the piles. Okay.
No.
So there.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I get it now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, the clerk is going to call for a recorded vote on the trail involving culverts and some fill.
Councillor Collins.
I'm okay with the trail.
Okay, so that's a yes?
Yes.
Councillor Moffett.
Nay.
Councillor Vincent.
Nay.
Councillor Osborne.
Nay, as per our official plan.
Councillor Cole.
Yay.
Sorry, was that yay?
Was that a yes?
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Fellner.
Yes.
Mayor McDermott.
Yes.
Environmental mayor. There you go.
Okay, so that is carried with 4-3 as a trail. Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome to Seguin, Mr. Naughton.
Thank you very
Welcome
much.
to the official
Very happy to
plan.
be here. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, I think you're still in the hot seat. You've got an update on the OP review, and I saw we went very public this morning.
Yes, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council, this report is just highlighting that there's been 2 new developments since the last time we reported, and I guess 3 new developments. The first one was that the consultant has issued several discussion papers. That's now on their website, and you can review them and comment on them up until the next open house, which is scheduled later in the fall. We also met as a project team with Municipal Affairs as a pre-consultation exercise, and the consultant has prepared notes on what was discussed, and that will form the basis for policy development later on in the fall. And then this morning at 10 o'clock, there was a 10-minute presentation as an open house, which is a statutory requirement under the Planning Act. And so that presentation can be viewed at any time. It's on their website, and you can provide comments as well anytime up until the next open house. So that's about it for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I have one question for you. Are we on schedule and on budget?
I would say that, yes, we're on schedule based on that. In terms of budget, I can, council will recall it was 67,000 was the initial. We've spent about 16,000 to date, so.
Thank you. And all I would say to all the councillors, for everybody that has a complaint or a question, get them on the website to get their points of view across. Send them all there. I'm going to ask
Mayor.
Peter.
Sorry,
Oh,
Mayor.
sorry, Councillor Moffat. I thought I went down.
Yeah, no, I went back up after Steve's comment on the costs. So we've got 15 to date. Are we on budget for 67? Because that's the ultimate question.
Yes, based on what I
Did we just lose Steve?
heard.
Yeah. Can everybody else hear me still?
Can hear you, but not.
Yeah, but Steve, you seem to have disappeared on us.
There he comes.
Yep.
Oh, that's odd.
You see me now?
That's better.
Froze
Okay,
there
go
for a
for
while.
it.
Can you see me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So based on the discussion that we had with Municipal Affairs and Housing, they, and it's true of government agencies, they provide a very large shopping list of things that we should be covering. I'm hoping that we can address them without too much time spent. And I see that being somewhat of a open-ended question in terms of how much study time the consultant might have to put to address all their concerns. So I did ask if Municipal Affairs and Housing could allow us the opportunity to sort of shortlist everything based on what we could find in our existing OP. So I'm hoping that's a way for us to save a lot of time and money. So, but we won't know until we really get into it.
So Steve, then when is our next maybe cost estimate update, given that, you know, we're sort of in a bit of a halfway point here, not in time or anything, but just sort of on budget and costs?
So I always, I make it a point to ask for an update every month. So
okay.
I would expect to have another invoice by the end of September.
Okay, so maybe our first October meeting, we could get an estimate on costs where we are with, given
Yes.
we're only 15 into 67, which is not very much, but that could balloon to 60 into 67 in a month.
That's correct.
Okay. Can we, Mayor, can we make that as one of our outstanding items on Craig's list, please?
Yep, an action item to bring costs to the first October meeting.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Okay, I have a motion here that I'll read and get first and seconders, and then we'll open it up to discussion and a description from Director Coppage. That the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve of the recommendation in staff report PW-RD-2020-016, the extension of Grand Street, Rosso, and Council directs staff to prepare the required agreement for Council consideration. Could I have a motion from Councillor Finson?
I so move. Sorry.
That's okay. And a seconder from Councillor Osborne.
Second?
Okay. Peter, do you want to take us through what's happening here, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Excuse me. Staff were approached by some residents who bought some properties at the back end of Grand Street. Grand Street has been a year-round road for many years, but it only services one property, which was 16 Grand Street. These people would like to develop the properties beyond 16, and in order to do that, staff have reviewed the requirements, and we decided the best route would be to extend Grand Street as a year-round road. Excuse me. And so it's laid out in the report. It's pretty straightforward. I'd be open up to any questions if anybody has any questions.
Questions, and the owners will pay the cost of the updating as I read it in your report?
That's correct, yes. There will be some upgrades to the existing Grand Street because it really is just a driveway and it's not a very good road bed. There'll be an extension of the actual across a road allowance, and then on the adjacent to the properties, there will be a turnaround put into the built. And then from that turnaround, people will be able to, there'll be 2 entrance permits that will go to the property owners, or they'll pay for them. And that's the best way that we came up with to allow access to those properties, in consultation with our planning department as well.
Okay, the clerk has a question for you.
So that motion has it coming back to council.
Yes, so basically, council directs staff to prepare the required agreement, because there will be an agreement to create a new road, basically. Is that correct?
We would come back to council, yes, for the approval or the acceptance of the road as a full-time road, the extension.
As long as he's aware, that's it.
Yeah, got to come back to council when it's the road, okay.
It does,
Councillor Moss.
yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, Peter, if I'm looking on page 273 of the council package, maybe that's that.
Well, page 1, 2, or 3 of my report. I don't have the pages.
Page
here.
2. Page 2.
Of your report.
Thank you.
So, as you just noted, the entrance permits are for the first 2 properties right off of the end of the turning. Therefore, in order to access those other 2 properties, there's going to have to be some driveway or some private entrance or some private agreement between the owners.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? No questions? Then I'll call for a vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Peter, it looks like a very creative solution to build some new lots. So thank you, and we'll look forward to it coming back.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move on. Peter, I think you're still on the hot seat a little bit. This is a lengthy letter from ratepayer Dennis Wellman about year-round maintenance on seasonal roads. And I guess it came to all of the councillors in hard copy. And my question is, should it be directed back to the Seasonal Roads Committee or to Director Coppage? It needs an answer. The person who wrote it did not give us a address to, or a phone number or an email to reply to. Director Coppage, do you have anything to add to what you think should be done on this?
Well, basically, we've already got a plan that we've created that we're gradually upgrading seasonal roads. And this really is part of what we're doing already. I think what Mr. Wellman is proposing is that all the roads be plowed right away and then gradually upgraded. I don't think that we can do that with the budget that we have, and we already have a plan. And as it stands right now, I think we just carry on with the plan that we have and upgrade it every year and work toward that goal.
Okay, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, Peter, thanks, Peter. As I read the letter, I understand where it's coming from. Both Mr. Wellman and his neighbor who currently plow the road are getting up in years, and I know his neighbor Doug Link has some hip issues, and there may be reasons they're asking for this service earlier than the planned renovation of the road, because he's asking for just a truck to plow, one of the small trucks that we used to plow the transfer sites, that kind of thing. He's looking at winter plowing.
I understand the circumstances of this request as well, because I live on the road.
Yes, I know.
It's really council's decision on how we really proceed with this, or it can go into discussion. I don't really know what more to say.
Can I ask, is it possible with the equipment you have to plow this road? I mean, is there sufficient turnaround and whatever? Is it possible to do that? Not with a snowplow, but with a smaller truck?
It's possible.
Okay.
Yes.
Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I'd like to, I believe, and I don't want to speak for a chair of our ad hoc summer road committee, but I actually think that we should look at this and look at maybe sit down with Director Koppisch and Tom before maybe in the next week or so to see where we're at with the plan, to see where we're at with the future plan, so that we can have a discussion and can respond back to the resident on this. That's what I would recommend.
I would go along with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Osborne has a comment.
Yeah, Councillor Coles, I have a bad hip too, so that's why I pay somebody to plow my road. But, you know, I think Peter should be directed at this point to respond. This letter was written July 21st, so it's not very current. We should get back to him. And I think, Peter, you might want to outline that you do have a plan and that it's not all going to happen at once. And we don't have a bunch of small plow trucks around to do every road safe. And just try to make a little sense with the man. I think it'd be better coming from you than from any one of our councillors, because you're the roads guy. Thank you.
Thank you. I just think that the reason we are getting it July 21st, I think, is because you delivered hard copies and none of us are picking up our hard copies. So if somebody knows him, I think he needs an answer of some sort right away, but I would encourage some sort of a discussion with the Roads Committee and Director Coppin. If somebody could call him and say, it's going back to committee and you are going to get an answer. By saying it's possible to plow this road, we're saying it's possible that we have a plow that'll fit, but similar to Councillor Osborne, I'd love to have the township plowing my private road, and doesn't seem to be happening. So it's unfortunate that they're aging, but it is the cost of wintering on a private road, I think. So I want to send it back to committee, but I also don't want to set dangerous precedents by plowing private roads because somebody asked for it.
May
Councillor Coles?
Yeah, this is not a private road. This is a seasonal road.
Okay,
This is a,
It's one of our
municipal-
township assets.
We don't plow seasonal roads.
okay. But can the committee and Director Coppich take it back and undertake to get some sort of an answer to Mr. Wellman
Yes.
about our plan and how it's gonna be undertaken, say, by the next meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So that becomes an action item. Thank you very much. Glad there's a committee to refer it.
That's not coming back to council, that's going straight.
It's just a letter to Mr. Wellman, yeah. And I think, Peter, you continue to be the voice of authority on the ACOM 141 rehabilitation project. Do you want to fill us in on this?
It was a study basically to describe the culvert replacement that's required on Highway 141 beyond Muskoka Woods. And because it involved the highway and because it flowed into Rosso, it was fairly comprehensive, and they went through the different options of how they could basically do this culvert replacement. And the best result is really to close the highway and put a new culvert in it, close it off completely to allow for the replacement of the culvert. And it's the quickest, least invasive method of replacing that culvert, just because it's so deep and where it is. That's really
Is it actually in the town? Is it actually in the township of Seguin, or is it over the border to Muskoka?
It's not township of Seguin.
And okay, that's what I thought. Okay, but
it would impact. The reason we were copied on it is because it's Highway 141, and if they did close it, it would impact everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, and we don't have dates yet on closure, do we? No.
Is that the one that's pylon, Peter, right now?
I'm sorry?
It's got pylons on the highway right now?
Yeah, you can see this, the sink marks.
Yeah, you actually have to go change lanes to get around it. Yep.
Yes, that's one.
Okay, thank you. The next one is some money coming our way, and Michelle, since you're the money lady, I'll ask you to speak to it a little bit.
This particular grant, we were notified that it was becoming available by Dustin Turner, who's at Ministry of Northern Development and Mines. So we applied for it, got our $5,000. They do mention in the letter that they will be in touch with us about the terms and conditions of the grant, and we have not yet seen the contribution agreement, but we already have the money. So this is just to let you know we have the money, and I'm not quite sure what we can spend it on yet, but I will let you know in the future.
But I'm assuming it will be with the museum board, yeah. It's a museum fund, so that's good news. Anytime there's money coming our.
Thank you, Michelle.
Mayor?
I think Rod has a question.
Yes, Councillor Osborne?
Just a question to Michelle. Can we use that 5,000 to offset our roof replacement expense?
I hope so, but I don't know. We haven't seen the agreement
Okay.
yet.
All right, thanks.
Okay, we have the 10D is a resolution that was put forward by Councillor Collins, and I will read it and get a motion and a seconder, and then we'll open it up for discussion. You also, in your addendum package, had some advice regarding it. So the motion is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby direct the Township Clerk to draft a policy that would create a grandfather clause such that all issued and outstanding residential permits prior to zoning bylaw 2006-125 that took effect September 18th, 2006 would be considered closed under the Ontario Building Code unless there is a substantial safety concern, and that all other Seguin residential properties within that period fall under the Ontario Planning Act exemption of legal non-conforming use that applies to, quote, land, buildings, or structures, and that those rights are tied to the property and not to the owner. Could I have a motion from Councillor Collins?
I open this motion.
And could I have a seconder from someone?
I'll second that. Councillor Coles.
All in favor, or no, I can't even do that yet, sorry, discussion first.
Oh,
Councillor Osborne.
is the chief building inspector with us today, since this is under his purview?
No, Director Stone is.
Okay,
And you have a letter of opinion, I believe is what the proper title is, from Russell Christie on a discussion, really, whether it's legal or not to do this. But we need more investigation. Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, for Director Stone, I guess. Steve, you there?
where's
Yep,
the
he's here.
CEO?
Yep, he can hear you.
Oh, there you are, there you are. Okay. How many of these 6,770 some odd open files are predate 2005?
Best estimate that I have would be a little more than half.
Okay. And approximately how many buildings, how many residences do we have in Seguin Township?
I would have to check Stats Canada on that, but I'm going to say maybe 2,500, a little more than that.
5,000, more like 5,000, because we have.
5,000.
So we have 5,000. How many residents did we have? 5,000 some odd, didn't we?
Yeah, that resident.
Full time?
So you
Oh, full-time, yeah, we have about 9,000 voters.
yeah, but you usually divide it by 2. So we're, like I said, it'll be based on Stats Canada. So I'm saying over 2,500 actual residential buildings.
Property. Right. So, and then do we have any idea on these open files, how many, what percentage of them pertain to a residential building? What percentage pertain to an accessory building? What percentage
I would say
pertain to docks and decks and
yeah, you'd further divide that by 1/3, 2/3 type of a number, but we haven't broken it down. That's one of the things that we're working on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, that 6,700 and some odd 100 of these things is an unwieldy number, and we need to do something to get the number to put the focus on where our liability really is, which is all the recent stuff, the stuff that should be managed properly because we have the proper staff and the procedures and things that, like that. So
yeah, I think just to further the discussion, the big change in the building code happening around the 2005 timeframe. So, I mean, with Councillor Collins' comment about coming up with 2005, 2006, that's, if we were looking at developing a best practices, we would sort of aim for that anyways, because that's when the current zoning bylaw came into effect, which was 2006.
Right.
So, and then similarly with the building code, obviously, if you look at the building code itself, just physically, it tripled in size around that time as well.
yeah, I used to have a copy of the old white book. Okay, so that answers my question. I walked away from the last meeting trying to kind of shaking my head and scratching my head saying how many houses do we have and see what anyhow. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just gotta say to my colleagues that when issues like this percolate to the top, and I personally feel that injustice is being done. I get involved and I jump in with both feet, to try and understand the circumstance and try to resolve the problem if one exists. And in this particular matter, there is one. My difficulty is understanding why there are 6,000 plus open permit issues on the table now. And why, for the love of God, would we go after open building permits from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s? That to me puts unfair burden of guilt on innocent property owners when the majority of present owners don't have a clue one exists. Not only is it unwarranted, I view it as unfair, unreasonable, unfounded, irrational, and totally absurd. To represent the public and to consider the well-being and interests of the municipality, isn't it time we as councillors bring a new policy forward that would benefit 90% of our citizens when 6,700 plus building permits still open? Myself, I would suspect lost paperwork in most, or a staff member forgot to sign a ledger or something along those lines. I, for one, will not put undue stress and worry on our residents by targeting properties with open permits, charging them $300 to do so, especially prior to 2006. So I would like to hear from my fellow councillors what they think. Thank you.
Councillor Osborne.
Was there not a letter solicited from Mr. Stone to a lawyer?
Yes, it's in your addendum package.
Yeah, oh, it's in addendum, I'm sorry.
It was in the addendum package you received on Friday.
Yes, can Steve speak to that, please? Summarize that for us?
Sure. Quickly, the township solicitor wouldn't recommend what was being suggested in the resolution.
And was there any backup for that? Does he quote the act, any sections or subsection of the building code or anything to back up his recommendation, or is it just legal speak?
No, it's a very clear and quite short letter that you received on Friday.
I didn't see it, and I don't see any section or subsection of the act quoted. That's why I'm asking.
He's quoting to the Building Code Act that council cannot authorize or direct the CBO to take any action which interferes with the CBO's duties or that is not permitted under the Building Code Act.
Okay, I'll say it once again. Mr. Christie, I don't believe quoted a section of the act that deals with that. Did he or not, Steve?
Well, you have the letter before you. There's.
I have the letter, yes, where he indicates the council doesn't have authority over that. I need to know where it says in the act that there's full authority by one person, CBO.
Well, we can bring that to you at the next council meeting.
Okay, I think that's important because we're about to make decisions based on law, and if we don't have the law in front of us, we can't make a decision.
Okay, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, I support what Councillor Collins is trying to achieve here. I guess understanding what the building code says and what it allows is, I think, really important to getting this done. It seems unreasonable that we're able to go into people's properties and resurrect old issues without anybody knowing anything. Usually, typically, when you buy a property, a title search would bring up that kind of stuff, but that doesn't even seem to be happening, and that's creating more of a problem. I guess I agree with what was just said. I think we should recommend that staff go back and take a look at this in light of the proposed resolution to see if there's not something different. I mean, we've already got a statute of limitations that we can apply, but that doesn't do quite the same thing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Okay, so you're recommending that it be sent back to staff for recommendation. Councillor Moffat, you have something to say?
Well, I was going to raise, I believe at our last council meeting, we were told that based on case law, anything older than 15 years was not the responsibility of the township, and that the case law supported that analysis. So I will give my own personal situation, because after that meeting, I circled back with Mark Vandermeer, and I understand that I have a building permit outstanding from 1978 from the prior owner. In 2012, when I actually raised the same cottage I have the paper outstanding permit on, it was not raised, not told to me, nothing. I got another permit in 2015, and at that time, no one told me that I had an outstanding permit. I went back and I actually asked the owner, and what was the closure process? He said, we went and got a permit, and that's it. So my question back to Mark was, demonstrate with 100% certainty that maybe, as Councillor Collins has noted, that there wasn't some, misstep with the paperwork, or, maybe the final inspection was done and no one noted it or whatever. So I have a real problem to try to open up going back that far and say that, I need to close a permit when I've had 2 subsequent permits and no one's ever raised anything to me until we get to this stage. And then we find out we have almost 7,000 permits. And we have, again, going back to Steve's comments last time, we have a limitation on liability. So let's close them up. Let's move this thing forward, and let's not worry about it, not spend any more time on it.
Okay. Councillor Collins, you have something to add?
Yes. This letter that I have, Russell Christie letter, is pretty vague. I mean, there's really, other than the fact he's saying, well, we can't do this. Well, we can. We can make a policy. All it's going to take is the majority of council is move this motion forward, second it, and vote on it, period. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, there's not even no case law. Nothing. It's just, oh no, you can't tell the chief billing official what to do. Well, if you look at the motion, it's not telling the chief billing instructor or chief billing official what to do. I'm not telling them what to do. But I think if the majority of councillors want to vote on this policy, I think we should do it. And if I had a second, I'd like to move the motion forward. And if there's a seconder, let's second it.
You have a seconder already.
Okay.
You have a seconder, we're in discussion.
Well, then let's
I would like to speak, please.
Okay, Councillor Finson, go ahead.
I think we need more information. I think we need to know whether it's legal to do it or not. I think we definitely have a problem, and I agree with Daryl that we should do something. We should do something. Close the old permits, like make it a mission to close them. Get those permits closed, get them out of the way. Like he says, the ones from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they need to go. But I would hate to put a motion forward and we all do the motion and then we've done something that we're legally not allowed to do. So I'd like to do it right. So I'd like to bring it back with some more information and do it right. But I would still at the same time say that we need to do something about getting rid of the old permits. Because, I mean, I did a title search when I bought my house, and I think everybody should do it, but obviously they don't. And they felt it wasn't required for whatever reason. But I think we do need to deal with them and get rid of those permits somehow. Close them ourselves if there's something that isn't a safety issue. I don't know. I'm sure there's a way we can do it without, but we should do it legally. Thank you.
Okay, I've got some councillors that want to speak. I'm going to close it off after 3 more councillors and then try and summarize. So Councillor Fellner, you're next.
There's 4.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so I have the same concern as Councillor Finson. I have no problem with passing this motion to eradicate these files prior to the date. none at all. It needs to be done. But I don't see the benefit in passing something that could be challenged legally. Okay, that's my only concern.
Yeah.
My other concern is this. Okay, we got 670 some odd open files, half of which are old, very old, right? We've already expressed a concern that we want to get, council has an overall desire, right, to clean this up, okay? And so instead of the chief building inspector coming back with a plan to clean this up, right? All we get is sort of a letter saying why we can't clean it up. And I think this is what really frustrates me about the whole thing. And not only does he not come back to Councillor Osborne's point, I mean, with some sort of plan, okay, well, you can't do this, but you could do that, right? He doesn't show up at all, right? So I'm a little bit annoyed. And you know what, like, this shouldn't be a difficult problem. This is a pretty simple issue. And if
Okay, let's move on beyond criticizing individuals.
well, I'm not criticizing anybody, but I'm saying this is a simple issue, and we should be able to collectively find a solution. And it gets frustrating when that doesn't occur. Okay, so
Director,
Sorry, can you hear me, Madam Mayor?
Yep.
So if council me the pleasure of looking at the report that was appended to Councillor Collins' motion, and the report is August 4th, and the recommendations. There's two recommendations. One, receive the report for information. The other one is to direct staff to prepare best practice policy for dealing with older building permits pre-2017 and building construction without permits in consultation with its solicitor and insurance provider. So if you look at Councillor Collins' motion, I would say that two are very similar insofar as staff actually are supportive of us coming up with a best practices approach to dealing with older permits. And as discussed earlier in the discussion, we did, and Mark and I have been talking about it, and we identify that there was a significant change in the building code that may allow us to have a little bit more leeway with pre-2005 building permits. So in that regard, I mean, as much as we can say at the staff level is that, yes, we're aware of that, and we would be quite supportive of coming up with a new approach to dealing with open permits. It's safe to say, and I can say this myself, and Mark would as well, is we're dealing with legacy issues that predate me as the director and predate Mark as the CBO. Since Mark's been here, and with my support, we've been trying to facilitate closure of old permits. Now, this may be through, if council directs, maybe a further impetus for us to look at being a little bit more aggressive in terms of, contacting people or reviewing open permits and trying to close them as best we can based on the information that's available to us. For example, one of the things that we've talked about is, and I think it was raised at the previous council meeting, was to get out there with more letters to contact people to say, there are permits that are open on your property. Is there a way that we can do an inspection to sort of determine if there is a And if there isn't, is there a way for us to close the file where there isn't a concern or a liability, a high risk liability to the municipality? So those discussions are ongoing in our department right now. And as I said, staff was well aware of this, and hence that was the recommendation in the report on August 4th. So for what it's worth, thank you.
Okay. One more comment from Councillor Osborne, Moffat, and Collins.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, I need to, just to refresh everybody's memory, quote this. A chief building inspector is an independent function under the code, cannot, and council cannot authorize or direct the CBO to take any action which interferes with his duties. There is no authority in the act for CBO to close an open file without final inspections. That's the closest thing in that letter from Christie to the law. Now, Steve, you mentioned the department has been endeavoring to clean this up. Let me preface this. This is not your problem. It's not Mark's problem. This is historic. It predates you guys. So, Mayor, I'm not picking on Steve. However, how high did this get? Like, was it at 10,000 and you've got it down to 6,700? Was it at 9,000, or has it been at 6,000, 7,000 for the last number of years? That's my first. Let me ask the second. Okay.
Sure.
I don't understand why, when we've had discussions on this and we're spending time on this, that the person, the CBO, is not involved in this discussion to maybe give us guidance or at least answer some questions. And thirdly, your idea of sending letters out to people that have open permits from the 70s is crazy. We should not be putting, as Ted says, people under stress or threat from 30, 40 years ago that somebody's going to come out and check out their building, which may not even be there, by the way. It's probably torn down and rebuilt. So sending letters is not only is time consuming, but I think it's an offense to our ratepayers to admit that this township and the previous townships were that remiss that we let thousands of permits not get closed. That would be a total embarrassment to fess up to that by sending letters out to 7,000 people. I've said my piece. No offense to you personally, Steve.
Yeah, well,
Do you want to answer the first part of that?
Where's the CBO?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, just at a response. So the first one, we can certainly endeavor to revisit sort of how we've been closing things and give some numbers. I would simply say, and I've only heard that you asked how high did it go. I would say going back to CBOs, there wasn't, that CBO was not actively engaged in closing any open permits. It's only been recent that we have been attempting to do that. And as I said, over the last 4 or 5 years, actively doing that. Secondly, with regards to the CBO, and I have mentioned this, that he does have childcare issues where he's a single provider of taking care of his kids this time of night, and that's why he doesn't appear. And I do my best by briefing him and getting answers for you. With regards to the third one, that was a suggestion from a policy standpoint. If council is not prepared in terms of policy, so be it. We wouldn't be actively in a letter campaign. That being said, the only thing I would simply suggest, I mean, council has been, and Craig may not want to do this, but if you want to have a special session of council with the CBO, it might be advisable to have that during the day when he's here in the office, and certainly the rest of us, myself and Michelle, can be involved as well. So,
thank you, Councillor Moffat.
So, going back to Councillor Finston's comment, in speaking to Mark Vandermeer a couple weeks ago, and as I referenced a few minutes ago, my permit from 1978 wasn't even on my docket because it didn't exist. So to do a title search and to find out if there's any open permits, if the information is not there, then the information is not there. So again, you wouldn't know. And to burden residents with that, the fact that it didn't exist, and when I purchased in 1998, it wasn't on my file. Therefore, it's on my file. And I'm sure others would feel the same way. The second point is that in speaking to Mark, he said to me, sure, we can close the file, but it'll cost you $300. I'm sorry, but
money grab.
I'm sorry, but it's not my issue, and it's not the residents' issue. And I understand. I see Steve's got his hand up there, but again, I don't know what I don't know what the underlying.
Join the meeting.
But the fact is, it's not. It should not be a burden on residents.
No.
That this is piled up and piled up.
The township's messed up.
Okay, thank you. Director Stone wants to answer, and then Councillor Collins, and then we're going to call a vote.
Yeah, further to Councillor Moffat's comment about the fee, for what it's worth, that's the fee right now with the bylaw that council has previously passed in terms of the building bylaw. Now, going forward, again, if council wants to develop a best practices, then part of that policy would be to look at opportunities for forgiveness with regards to fees and so forth. So that's just, amendment to the building code bylaw in terms of its fee schedule. So again, there is a solution. It's just that we have to get there in terms of policy, and that leads to changes to a bylaw, for example.
Thank you.
Councillor Collins, last comment on this issue.
Yes, well, I'm not asking for a bylaw. I'm just asking for, to move a policy, to form a policy. And a policy is defined as corporate direction that is formally adopted by council resolution. That's all I'm asking for, a policy. And I need to know if the last CBO wasn't concerned about open building permits, who instigated this? Was it the present CBO or was it you, Steve?
No, it was Mark. He realized that there was a very large backlog, if you want to call it, a library of open permits, and in terms of his best practices, he thought it is in the best interest of everybody involved to have permits closed. And from a building code perspective, yeah, you want to close all permits. You
can do a housekeeping, or you could do housekeeping as well, can't you? When you think of it, I mean, like there's certain terminologies that you guys use, like, oh, this is a housekeeping. Well, this is a housekeeping issue. I've heard that many times.
Right. So it's a little different than a housekeeping bylaw that you would pass for a zoning bylaw. But certainly this is what you're asking for in terms of a best practices policy for closing permits. Yeah, that's with housekeeping in mind. We want to clear the backlog as best we can.
$1 times 6,700 is $2 million in revenue. $2 million at 300 a hit.
Yeah, and as I stated earlier, that's just because the existing building bylaw that the township passed acknowledges that as a fee. And as I said, if you develop a policy it looks at some form of forgiveness. Fee forgiveness is something that councils do all the time. So that can be built to any sort of policy moving forward.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Okay, I think what I'm hearing is everybody wants to get rid of the old ones and inappropriate contact with people that may not be alive, buildings that may not exist.
Yes.
And I think it looks bad on this council, previous councils, old CBOs, everybody. So I'm hearing loud and clear that we want to tackle it. But I also am hearing loud and clear from several councillors that we want to tackle it in the best way possible. And that we do need, as we see in the staff recommendations, we do need some legal and some insurance advice on it. So we have a motion on the floor that is asking the clerk to draft a policy. And I think the clerk would like to speak to that.
So if council's all sort of set and done and ready to vote on this, then I have two concerns. One is, this is not, and I spoke to Councillor Collins, so he's aware, this is not a clerk's area of responsibility or authority. And as you've seen, the clerk hasn't been involved in the discussion at this point. So that's my first issue with this proposed motion, and I did raise that with Councillor Collins, so he's aware of that. This, to me, appropriately should be Development Protective Services where it belongs. The other concern I would have, if council is not prepared to change that motion and leave it as the clerk's response at this point is we have a legal opinion on it. So I can't, in all good faith in my job, prepare some policy that's in violation of what the legal comment is. Because the first thing I would normally do is go to lawyer and say, how do we do this? And if he says you can't do it, that's it. So if you're going to look at this motion, those are my two comments on whether or not it belongs with the clerk. And if you say it does belong with the clerk, then that's my comment on whether or not it's legal.
And I have a proposal to the motion that we change township clerk to staff in Director of Development and Protective Services to draft a policy that would look at eliminating all old permits. I don't think we should say grandfather clause or anything. Ask them to how to get rid of everything before 2006 and bring it back to council with a definite plan of how to do it and how to avoid it in the future. I think that's the other piece that I believe is really important, that we don't let the numbers grow as we go forward. We've inherited a big problem. I'd like to hand it to staff to fix that inherited problem, but also make sure it doesn't happen going forward. In order to do that, we would need to amend this or start again. Clerk?
Well, at this point, you have a motion that's been moved and seconded, so you have to deal with that motion. I don't believe you can really amend that motion to do what you just said, I don't think.
Okay.
When I look at the wording of it, I think it's fairly clear on what Councillor Collins had intended, with the motion. Now, so in order to do that, you could try to amendment, you're right, that's one possibility is amendment. One is to vote on it, another one is to defer it, and another one is to withdraw it.
No. I would amend it. I would, Mayor, I would amend it to say direct staff, yes. I would amend that part of it, but that's the only part I would amend.
I guess I'm nervous about saying a grandfather clause until we have legal and insurance advice that that's the proper way to do it. And that,
But there is a meaning for a grandfather clause, though. There are.
We don't know without issuing a grandfather clause is legal. That's where I'm not prepared to go that direction. So if we want to, one thing we can do, we can vote on carried or defeated or deferred. Can I add that to the third?
Well, no, there would have to be a motion to defer. And then
motion to defer and bring back another resolution. No?
So you could have a motion to amend, which Councillor Collins has so far moved an amendment, but there's no second. And what that does is you motion to amend, you get a second, or you vote on the amendment. If it's carried, then you vote on the resolution as amended. If you make a motion to defer, you motion to defer to a certain time or reason, so for staff to report or for next meeting. And then it comes back as it is. Vote on it.
Can we listen to the clerk, please? He has the floor.
Okay, we can
If
listen.
you vote on it carried, then it's just done the way it is. If you vote and defeat it, it's defeated, and you could propose another motion.
Okay.
Motion to defer.
Councillor Moffat is first.
Actually, Director Stone's had his hand up. So
Yeah,
I
I
will
know.
let him weigh in because I think he's probably got something juicy to tell us.
Go ahead, Steve.
Madam Mayor, to the rest of council, again, I would go back, if you're looking at amending a motion, I would go back to the staff report in August 4th. That's pretty open-ended as a resolution, if you want to call it that, because I think it does address all the concerns that Councilor Collins is looking at. You may want to just drop the pre-2017 reference and just refer to it as just the open permits. But it would then be the direction that I think council is wanting, is to get staff to come back with the best practice approach and outline that in a report or two, and then council can debate it and direct staff to refine it as needed. So.
Okay, thank you. That's a good suggestion. Now, Councillor Moffat, you have the floor.
Yes, I was just going to, if we were going to go down that route, I guess what I think we should be doing in any best practices, given what we're talking about here, is there's no burden on the resident. If, it's not
their fault.
There's multiple issues, potentially someone didn't call, someone didn't do the paperwork, whatever it is, but I think our best practice should be at no expense or burden to the residents to get these, open building permits, whatever the policy ends up being in the time frame. It should not be a burden onto the residents, and getting letters or notices in the mail that says, hey, by the way, you've got an open permit, and the person passed away 6 years ago.
Yeah. Okay,
So
I would agree with that.
thank you.
You can't be punitive to people
Right.
that have tried to do their best.
Right.
Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, referring back, Steve, to your comment about the August 4th report, where it says that the act doesn't specify when someone must give notice the building is complete, final, and the building department only has 10 days, right? So I guess the big question is, back in 1975, did people know that?
Join the meeting.
I would rather not kill this policy recommendation of Ted's. I'd like it to stay on the table. I wouldn't want to pass it and find out what we passed, Ted, was illegal. And I think that staff needs to find out the legalities of a new policy that you're recommending, Ted. But until such time as we do, I think the safe thing is not to kill it, not to defeat it, to defer it until we've got further legal information as per the clerk. So I would therefore move to defer.
Okay, so he's got a motion to defer. Does he have a seconder? Can I write on this?
Well, first remember, Councillor Collins moved to an amendment, and you haven't asked for a seconder on the amendment yet.
Okay, your amendment was to change the word township clerk to staff. Ted?
Yes.
I will second that.
Thank you.
So you need to vote on the amendment.
So do we have a motion, or now we need a vote whether that amendment is okay? That just one first amendment. All in favor? Can you raise your hands, Councillor Finson?
All in favor, yeah.
Okay, so that one amendment passes. Now we have a motion from Councillor Osborne to defer. And I'm assuming you're saying defer until staff can come back with a concrete recommendation?
Well, we've got warnings from the clerk. We've got unanswered legal questions, a vague opinion from Russell Christie. There's too many unknowns here to take a chance on passing this, only to have it rescinded because we did something wrong. And I'm not, like I said, I'm all in favor of grandfathering this thing, somehow getting rid of these old permits. But at the same time, I don't want Ted's resolution to pass and get defeated legally, and then we're back to square one. Let's keep it in motion. Let's just defer it. But we need way more information from the clerk, from legal, and from the building department. And if we need to have a meeting with Mark Mandevere at 3 p.m. in the afternoon because of his family problems, then so be it. We need to talk to our chief building inspector. There's no way we should be proceeding with any of this without talking to our CBO. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a motion to defer from Councillor Osborne. Is there a seconder? Is that you, Councillor Felder, or you want to speak? Are you seconding it?
Mute.
Okay, seconding. Counselor, I can read his lips. He is seconding the deferral.
The meeting date or something.
Okay. Director Stone, what is a reasonable deferral date?
September 8th.
Well, I would say at the very least, given the time frames, it would probably be the second meeting in September, if not the first meeting in October.
Okay, how about we say by the first meeting in October? If you can come earlier, that would be much appreciated.
Okay.
I think it's October 1st, October 5th.
And just so I'm aware of what you're asking me to prepare for the first meeting in October?
We're asking staff to come back, consider the legality and the implications of what Ted has recommended as a possible solution. And if it's not correct, then come with another way to get rid of the old ones. And you're also being directed by Councillor Moffat that there not be a punitive tone or dollar to the ratepayers.
Or letter.
Yeah, well, or anything. That we need to be caring and conscious. Councillor Moffat, do you want to add to that?
I was just gonna say, I think the second part is if Councillor Collins' recommendation is not, cannot stand as written, Steve really would fall back into 1.02 of his August 4th report on a best practice with no punitive damages or no punitive, to the residents. I think that's where
we're headed. That'd be kind of in the action, Yeah.
Thank you.
That clear, Steve?
That originally was.
Okay. I see Councillor Fellner wants to speak.
Yes, and I'd just like to add one thing. Can we get an agreement based on this discussion today that until we find a solution for this problem, until we find the best workable solution, that we're not going to actively pursue any of these open files?
Yeah, I
mean, if someone
what we're
wants a
asking.
new building permit and he's got an open one, okay, so be it. But they're not going to proactively pursue any open files till we get.
Yeah, don't go after the old ones and punitively punish people.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. I agree with that. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Steve, do you know where you're headed?
Well, I'll wait for the clerk's action list. How's that?
Okay, well, I guess what we need, we have a motion we have a motion to defer and a seconder. So can we have a vote on the deferral of this? All in favor of deferring for more information?
Aye.
Okay, so that's carried. So I just write deferred here.
Deferred to October 5th.
I just want to say I keep losing my connection, so if I'm gone, it's because I can't get back on.
We hear you,
keep welcoming you back because we can hear you.
I think that the phone doesn't work at night here.
Okay, do we need a motion for Steve?
Yeah, according to Nigel, you would give him a motion so he knows exactly what it is you're asking him. Because he doesn't sound like he's too confident of it.
Do you want to take a stab at moving it? Well, and we'll move on. What we'll do, we're going to draft a motion to that effect, but we'll move on to the next couple items while that's being written. And we'll come back and read it to make very sure that Director Stone knows what we're asking of him. The next one is very simple. That the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve the mayor providing the attached letter of support to Lakeland Networks for funding applications under the Improving Connectivity for Ontario, it's the ICON program. And the letter was written by Lakeland. We've done these, you've directed me to do these for other people. And so could I have a motion from Darrell Moffett to approve me doing this?
So move, but I do have a question.
Okay, yeah, once we have a seconder, we'll.
Yep.
Could I have a seconder from Terry Felder? Okay, discussion. Some question, Councillor Moffett.
Yeah, the only question I had was, it seemed like there was a deadline of August 21st. And
There
we.
was. There was, but they were late asking for it. All the others were.
I know. So I just wasn't sure if it's, I don't know.
I wrote a letter to go with, I wrote a note to go with their application saying it would be discussed at today's meeting.
Okay. It just seemed like why we do it if it's already passed, and then it doesn't, it doesn't help.
As
Thank you.
Michelle can attest to, in most of these funding applications, they're electronic and you are allowed to add to them. So they were advised that this would come before council and that I was anticipating approval.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Fellner, you have a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you, that's carried.
I'm getting there.
I'm still working on it.
I'm still working on it.
Excellent.
And this one came from Rod. So I'll read the motion. That the council, this was in the addendum package, that the council of the corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby direct staff to investigate the option of establishing set fines for contravention of the following Township of Seguin bylaws and report back to council on the matter. The first one is bylaw 2008-103, being a bylaw to regulate the protection, preservation, and removal of trees within Township of Seguin. The second is bylaw number 2008-104, being a bylaw to prohibit or regulate blasting in the areas of Township of Seguin. And the third, a bylaw number 2008-105, being a bylaw to prohibit or regulate the placing or dumping or removal of fill in areas of the Township of Seguin. So Rod, can you move this?
Yes, you want me to speak to that, Mayor?
Well, first we need a seconder, and then we'll get you.
Okay, I'll move that. I'll move.
Councillor Collins?
Yep, I'll second that. Yes, I'll second, Mayor.
Okay, so Rod, go ahead, and we also have
Okay.
Chief Hood on the line.
Okay, I didn't realize this was a motion, in the form of a motion. I thought it was just, I asked for discussion, but however, that's fine. I just learned something in the last few days from Patrick Schubottom and Don Hood, his boss, that if you have a sand beach, whether it was legal or not legal, if it's been existing since before 2008, before this bylaws were struck, that you can continue to add sand to maintain that beach, even though the beach maybe was put in illegal at some point. The reason I wanted to have the discussion, and just discussion at this point, is the fact that in speaking with Steve Stone, we don't have a schedule of fees or fines for these infractions like we would with an illegal fire dawn, right? Where you can ticket right there. And more, it seems we've got cases coming up of neighbors complaining about other neighbors cutting trees, putting fill in, etc. And by the time we get there, by the time our bylaw people get there, the damage is done. And even though it's done, there is no fine, there'll be mitigation, there's a possible site plan, and it's all after the fact, but the damage is done. I would like to see, and just want to get the feeling, the appetite from council as to whether we should not have fines that bylaw can set or administer when the infraction occurs. Even though a remedy may be necessary after the fact, if we have a set fine for, say, cutting more than 10% of your trees, that would probably stop the tree cutting, number one. And secondly, it would be a deterrent to others that might think they can go ahead and do it and plant new trees later. So I'm looking for a deterrent to back up those three bylaws. Not so much blasting. I mean, that's a pretty serious issue. it's the tree cutting and fill. And we seem to be getting more and more cases keep coming on our plate on neighbor complaints. And I think if there's a way to deter it, let's do it. Could we have comments from Don on that maybe?
Yep, Don's on the call, yep.
So Councillor Osborne through the mayor, we actually do have under part 3s on those 3 bylaws, we can issue a ticket, which forces them go directly to court.
You can.
What I would like to make sure is if we bring out a set fine schedule, which is significantly less than a part 3 ticket, does it still give us the ability to also serve them with a part 3? The concern would be is set fines average between $200 and $300. So somebody going, hang on, I can do what I want to do and spend the $300, no big deal. Versus if we have a set fine for the minor altercations that we run into and the issues we have that are fairly minor, we still have that card in our pocket. Can we still give them POA part 3, which forces them to go to court? Then the judge decides how much he's going to be charged. We plead our case and, Your Honor, we would like a $3,000 fine. He may come back and say, yes, no problem. Or, well, no, I think it's only a $1,500 fine. The limits are set out in the bylaw where it's between 5 and 15,000, depending on the situation.
So you do have the ability to ticket now. I didn't realize that in speaking with Steve. I didn't think you did.
Yeah, we have the ability to issue a ticket that goes to court directly.
Right. Do you, though, actually do that? Have you had experience where you do ticket on those kind of infractions? Tree cutting, for example, or Phil?
Well, for example, tree cutting, we actually had a gentleman call today asking some questions that Patrick successfully charged in court about 7 years ago. So yes, we don't do many, but we do and have done it.
It's just that there seems to be more incidents, and I thought ticketing may prevent it, but if it hinders your actual judgment for a stiffer penalty, then we've got to look at that too. But the reason I brought it up is I wanted to get a poll from the council as to what they feel about this, because we seem to be getting a number of these complaints as to whether we should have a look at it. That's all I'm bringing it up for, Mayor.
I think what I should do is I will check with the lawyer that put through the open burn in 2 days, and check with her and ask her, can we do both? Do we have an option to do both in one bylaw? And if we can, then I say we do apply for set fines as an immediate deterrent right on the spot. Right. And if they continue, then we give them a part 3.
Exactly. Sounds good.
Councillor Moffat?
So I want to understand this a little bit, Don, since we're working on another issue together. And I'm not going to bring names into it, but I'm looking at the fill bylaw, and I'm not sure, and I don't see where we have an immediate in the fill bylaw to ticket someone.
We don't.
Right. So that bylaw is missing that piece.
Well, no, that bylaw, if you look at the very end of the bylaw, it does give you the parameters under enforcement on the different fine options. So on a first conviction, the fine could be between 500, but not more than 10,000. If it's a subsequent conviction, it could go up to 25,000. Who determines the actual fine is the judge.
That's
right.
Phil.
Okay. But in that circumstance, you have to go to court to get that fine applied versus
correct.
Versus right there on the spot.
On the spot, yeah.
Yeah. As I say, as long as, I think we'll go back to 155 Burgess Road is a good example. I think for those that can remember, he contributed a significant amount of money to the Ruth Dare Fund and also spent a couple $100,000 on trees. But in his mind, he got what he wanted. Right? It only cost him $25,000.
But he sold it for millions. He didn't care.
So Don, it's safe to say this sort of one brush doesn't fit all kind of things, because in the case of Phil, we also have as we've seen tonight, but what we also have under part 4 in the, under part 5 in the fill, it has to come to council for their consideration. So there's actually there potentially could be 3 different mechanisms. One is on the spot, one is, and maybe it's 1A and 1B, or sorry, 2A and 2B. Council, it has to come to council, and then it may go to court before you actually have any resolution.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy blanket. We can just make one tweak to it and we're there. So
No,
again,
I think the first question is we want to find out, can we do set fines as well as part 3s? If the answer is you can, and we put a schedule together for fines, and then we can give them a $200 or a $300 ticket right on the spot.
right.
The difference being between that, say, than our open burn.
Gail, join the meeting.
Lighting off fireworks. Typically, the issues we're having, it's not a 1 hour event. It's over a month or 2 months or 3 months.
Right.
So it's difficult to walk in and stop them on day 1 because they happen to be moving a bit of rock down by the water. Because at that point, you almost have to wait till they do something and then jump on them. So it is different, but I think that's the first step, is to find out, can we do both? And if we can, then have that ticket in our pocket as well as a part 3, which is going to cost them money. Even if the fine is thrown out, they still have to come to court, and they're going to have to hire legal.
But under part 5, Bill, sorry, Mayor, under part 5 under the fill, you may not even get to court. You may just resolve it with council.
Well, that's if council agree to say, okay, yeah, we won't do this if you do this. It's like you negotiate a settlement.
Right.
And that can happen with even the part 3, is where when you end up in court and the judge may say, okay, here's the deal. The fine will be reduced to minimum, but you will agree to do this, right? So you charge the guy $5,000 or you charge him $500 and say, put in $4,000 worth of trees and shrubs that you took out. So there's ways to work both.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
I'll get to you in a moment, Councillor Osborne, but I do just want to read you the line of this motion. It is simply that we direct staff to investigate the option of establishing set fines for contravention. So we're not setting fines tonight.
Nope.
We're just giving Dawn the authorization to go ask the question of the lawyer and investigate what we can and can't do. So
Exactly. I'm
really
good with
important.
that. Direction to Don to further investigate penalties.
Yeah. Is that
Yep.
what your hands up for, Councillor Osborne?
That's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
So that's all we're doing, is asking you to look at the options, Dawn, and come back and see if we can do both, or see if we can strengthen our teeth in whatever, because all of these bylaws are important.
Yeah.
Put some
Understood.
teeth in it. That's all. Yeah.
So we have a motion and a seconder. Could I have a vote? All in favor of authorizing staff to investigate?
Aye.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Now, I'm going to take us back to Councillor Collins' resolution. And we have a resolution here that hopefully will give Director Stone specific direction. That council directs staff to investigate the legalities of the Collins resolution of August 24th, 2020, and report back to council thereon, and that staff bring back to council for review and approval a plan for closing old building permits, with consideration that such plans not be punitive in any way, and that staff will report to council by October 5th, 2020 at the latest. Do I have, Councillor Collins, are you comfortable moving that?
About, yes, and they're not going, in the interim of this, they're not going through now dealing with these old permits, correct?
No.
Is that correct?
Yeah, they're not supposed to. I'm just looking at how I can work that in here.
Yeah, no, what Counselor Fellner said about pursuing open, like, there's no, from this point on, there's no.
Well, why don't we say, and no aggressive pursuing of very old permits until the report comes back.
Yeah, that there's none of these permits are being pursued until we finalize this. As simple as that.
Yes.
Right?
Could we say put a moratorium on the investigation of old permits?
Good word, Art.
Sometimes.
Thanks, Art.
Director Stone, are you comfortable with what I read, and that we would end that very old permits will have a moratorium, or sorry, that very old permit, that the pursuit of very old permits will have a moratorium until the report is received? Councillor Moffat.
I was just gonna say, why don't we just leave it as open permits?
Yeah.
Well, if there's, no, because if there's one that's 2019 that's open because of a safety issue, they have to be pursuing it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
The ones that are open, they're this year and stuff. If it's a safety issue, it's important that it be active.
Yep. It's that benchmark figure, Ann. It's the benchmark figure of 2006, right? September 18th, 2006, when this all became law, right? Prior to that date, that's the benchmark date.
So why not just word it as a moratorium on any open permits prior to 06, period?
There you go. Yep. Yep.
Are you comfortable, Director Stone? You got your hand up.
My only comment would be that now you're asking the CBO not to investigate things that may or should be investigated. You referred to things as safety matters. It's hard to determine at this point if anything before 2006 is not a safety issue. So I'd be very cautious with regards to how explicit you're saying about old permits.
Only a month. That's only a month away.
Well,
yeah, I'm wondering though if we could. You're talking about liabilities going way back too. That should we say that council directs staff to investigate the legalities and liabilities associated with with Collins' resolution of August 24th and report back to council thereon? Because I'll get to you, Councillor Moffat. Just hang on.
Yeah,
if there was a really big outstanding safety thing, you could catch it.
Yeah,
so you're going to report back to us.
Yeah, I would say it's well understood based on what you just mentioned to us. And it's also understood, even though it doesn't have to show up in your resolution, that, we're not going to go out and aggressively look at old permits until we've studied it further and reported back to council. But it's safe to say if there is an old permit where the structure is not built to code and is going to collapse and hurt somebody, yes, the CBO.
You got to do that. Yes.
Yeah.
But we understand. I mean, there's clarity in what you just mentioned, Mayor, and what Mr. Collins or Councillor Collins and the rest of council is. It's just keep the direction brief. That way we can expedite our review and report back to you the 1st of October.
Okay. Councillor Moffat.
I was just going to say, Councillor Collins is already qualified unless there's a substantial safety concern in his motion. So I think he already was addressing that to say, look, that wasn't part of this process. That's how I would read that. So I don't think anyone is saying to turn a blind eye to any safety and to direct the CBO not to do that. And I think it was very clear in Councillor Collins's original motion.
Yeah, which I would just point out is deferred. What you're trying to do is give us direction right now. Right. And I would say that the more simpler one is in keeping with Councillor Collins' motion, which is the one that showed up in the August 4th meeting. So it's a case of we'll prepare a best practices report for you guys to be considered. I would simply say that's as clear as direction as we need.
Okay. So can I have a mover for the, you want me to read it? Okay, I'll read it again. The council directs staff to investigate the legalities and liabilities of the Collins resolution of August 24th, 2020, and report back to council thereon. And that staff bring back to council for review and approval a plan for closing old building permits with consideration that such plans will not be punitive in any way, and that very old permits will have the pursuit of very old permits will have a moratorium until the report is received. And that staff will report to council by August 5th, 2020 at the latest. October 5th, 2020 at the latest. Are you prepared to move that, Councillor Collins?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Rod Osborne? Okay, all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Oh, you're back, Gail.
Yeah, I'm back.
Thank you. Okay, that's carried.
Yeah.
Chief Administrative Officer's report, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Do the people have any questions for her?
No.
Good. I think she's been doing a great job, juggling many hats and many email addresses. Council reports. Let's start with Councillor Vincent, since she's here right now. We never know when she's going.
Dark out there.
My phone's not working so well. I don't have a whole lot to report, just a lot of phone calls, a lot of people complaining about cottagers and stuff like that. But other than that, I haven't done a whole lot of other stuff. And I'm actually, as everybody must know, in Prince Edward Island right now, catching up on some work here. So that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your holiday. Councillor Collins.
Yes, the regular meeting for DSAB, we didn't have one. There's not one this month. There'll be one next month. Apparently, I just got an email today that the new CAO for DSAB is started work today. Other than that, just dealing with concerned residents, dealing with issues that pop up on a daily basis, and putting fires out. That's what I've been doing. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fellner.
Yes, thank you. Again, not much in the last few weeks to report. Committee of Adjustment meeting. Yeah, that's just last, yes. And I had a look at the new roof on the museum. Looks very good. Quite an improvement. Grounds are in great shape. It's kind of a shame it's just sitting there other than Pokemons. That's about it for me.
Okay, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended Zoom EMS meeting, and that's where, as Michelle referenced, Dave Thompson was bringing us really bad news. Their deficit in the annual budget is $686,000, mostly because of COVID threats to paramedics. And as Dave said, if one got the sniffles, he was gone for 2 weeks. And that's, other than PPE, which added up to maybe 150 to 200,000. That was the bulk of the expense. There was a thought to help reduce this deficit by employing winter coverage hours starting after Labor Day. And we had a discussion about that, thought there was high risk at that. So we decided to not get to winter hours till at least the end of after Thanksgiving, when there's less people around on the highways and less accidents. And it's still, the province will, they'll be getting about 190,000 back out of the province. But when you take the levy throughout, our hit is somewhere in the neighborhood of $115,000 on one-time special levy. That is unless COVID goes to 23. And fortunately, I learned at that meeting that we were receiving $600,000, and other municipalities are too. So municipalities are not going to get hit hard. It's low impact on them, but it's heavy impact on EMS. We came to an agreement, and he's going to be covered for this year. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
A couple things. I think I mentioned to some of you, I'm not sure all, but we lost the president of the Chamber of Commerce and the executive secretary a couple of weeks ago. So that search is going on. A previous president has stepped in to take charge of the chamber in the absence of those two. And if you notice on Facebook, she's been doing a lot of promotion of the chamber on Facebook. I was at a finance committee this morning for Belvedere, and I can't tell you a whole lot right now because they're still working out details, because there's a lot of back and forth between the Ministry of Health or Ministry of Long-Term Care and the homes in terms of COVID-related costs, and they're trying to iron them out. It doesn't look like it's going to be a big hole, though. It's not coming out that bad. We just got notice that the mortgage is due for the mortgage renewal for Belvedere, and there's 4 years left on the mortgage there. So we're renewing for 2 years at 1.65. Interest is pretty decent interest rate. And hopefully at the end of the 2 year period, we're going to then make the decision, do we pay off the mortgage or do we renew for the next 2 years? So hopefully we pay it off and leaves us free, which should help all of us as well. And as well, we're just starting to talk about renegotiating or working out a deal with the hospital as we had planned to when we went into the management structure that we're currently in with an assignment from the hospital. So we're just going to start that. And to get that accomplished, we're going to be renewing the current director's contract for another year, just so we're covered till we get the negotiations wrapped up. So that's all underway. We have a meeting on Wednesday, so a full board meeting.
Okay. Councillor Moffat?
So similar to others, lots of calls, emails. I did have a site visit with Director Stone and Director Fraser Friday, and for a matter that will come, as far as I know, in front of council on the 8th regarding a fill bylaw issue. So still working with the resident on that, and still working with the neighbors to deal with that issue before it comes to council. A number of meetings with regards to ice cap on websites and finances and planning for next year and programs and stuff like that. So lots of activity on that file. And just on that, I am into McDougall for a deputation in front of their council on the 2nd of September to hopefully convince them to join IceCap. They and Whitestone are not part of it. So we are looking, Forrest Pengra, who's the co-chair, and I are looking to hopefully sway the decision makers in McDougall for that. Other than that, there's, it's mostly been, residents' questions, comments, and stuff like that. So, thank you.
Councillor Felder, do you have a question for Councillor Moffat?
No, I have just something that I forgot to share.
Okay. You?
Received word on the weekend that the fundraising for the fireboat is proceeding along quite nicely, and we're just about halfway there in pledges now. So looks like it will become a reality, hopefully. So, and yeah, that was all. That's the only thing I forgot to mention.
Okay. Well, since the last meeting, I've been participated in the Muskoka Conservancy action, which they raised way more than they planned it on. Michelle and I attended the closed meeting of Perry Sound Council on the 11th of August about the Wellness Center. I attended the West Perry Sound Hospital Foundation AGM on the 12th. The 13th, Art and I attended the regional broadband meeting, and you've got the the summary of the meeting there. August 15th was a beautiful day on Saturday, and that was the kickoff of the CNIB Dock to Dock party that I attended with Mayor Harding and MP Scott Aitchison. I thought it was a Dock to Dock party in Muskoka, but there were docks on Vancouver Island, there were docks in PEI, all participating, and they did double their goal of fundraising that day. So it was quite an event, actually, to replace their existing one. 17th to the 19th, I participated in the virtual AMO meeting, which I have to say, it was extraordinarily well organized. The presentations were fabulous because they were all pre-recorded, so they were all perfect. There was no fiddling with PowerPoints or anything, but I really did miss the interaction with other mayors and the networking. They had chat rooms, but it's not the same. I participated in a delegation with Minister Rickford concerning the airport expansion, and then with several other of the West Perry Sound municipalities, we had a delegation with Steve Clark of Municipal Affairs on broadband. Last Thursday, the 20th, was the Clear Lake Association Annual General Meeting, which Rod and I attended via Zoom. Then last Friday was the tribute to the EMS fallen workers at the Stocky Center. It was a very solemn ceremony, but it couldn't have been in a nicer place. It was on the patio of the Stocky Center on a perfectly calm day. And I was unaware that we actually lost one of our EMS workers this year. So that was, all of his family were there, and grandchildren and everything. And then on the 22nd was the Lake Rosso North Association AGM, again by Zoom, and it was a good meeting with lots of questions. And so I've had lots of meetings. All of the lake associations are struggling to get their virtual meetings in before Labor Day, and most of them are still trying to have them. I think some of them are liking them better than in-person meetings. So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee agendas and minutes and the correspondence as presented on the agenda for the August 24th, 2020 meeting of Council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Vinson?
I so move.
Great. And seconded by Darrell Moffat.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we have a motion that bylaw number 2020-084, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of meetings of council, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Councillor Cole?
So move.
And a seconder from Councillor Osborne.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'm getting good at remembering what order you wards are in. That the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn this regular meeting of council at 8:24 p.m. to meet again on Tuesday, August 25th, which is tomorrow, 2020, or at the call of the mayor. Could I have a motion from Councillor Fellner?
So moved.
And a seconder from Councillor Collins.
I'll second that motion, Mayor.
All in